Mhm. Yeah, I got it. Yes.
House. Instead, it started haunting one of the girls, and this is her testimony. Hello, and welcome back to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. Today, I spoke with a woman who grew up in a haunted house, and although that's very interesting, the bulk of her story is about the encounters that she had afterwards, and there are strong indications that these encounters were caused by something that followed her after she left her childhood home. It wasn't all dark though, and if you like good endings, I think you'll appreciate this one, but let's not jump the gun, and let's go straight into my conversation with Lori, starting with what happened in the house that she grew up in.
So there was four of us. We were a family of six with four kids, and my parents obviously needed to move out of our small apartment into a bigger home. So they rented a 3-bedroom house, and the house was, I always thought it was like the coolest, cutest house, and it had a big backyard, and it was cool. After a little while living there is when weird, creepy things started happening. My dad put down a carpet in the basement, and my mom was like, I'm going to clean it, and this is going to be the kids' play area. It was a massive basement. And she cleaned it all out. And I remember it was somewhat of springtime, and she scrubbed the walls. I remember she was scrubbing with a broom, and she was spraying the walls down. Shortly after, when she let it to dry, she came back downstairs and she freaked out. And it said, F you, like written out the word F you. And then it said, get out. It wasn't in red or black, like the scary movies say. It wasn't bleeding. It was actually in like a light blue. And it was like almost scratched into the wall. Very scary. We obviously didn't know what it meant. We weren't exposed to a lot of like bad stuff. So to us, we were like, oh, that's like cool. What is this? So my mom got a pastor and he prayed over the house. And I feel around this time is when, I don't know, I know the pastor was an incredible person. He's still alive today. He's an incredible guy, a great pastor. He loves God, but something was disturbed in that house, because you would think everything got peaceful, but it was almost like the demons were so strong that it claimed that house. And that was like, it went wild. We still played downstairs. Everything was fine. They covered everything up. But the room that was downstairs in the basement was really scary. There was a room that was off of our playroom. We don't know really why it was scary. It was, I never heard anything or seen anything, but you felt something was in there, almost like watching you. And we never played in that room. It was just a storage room. So that kind of like left on its own. And everything was fine. They fixed it. A little while after that, another spring cleaning went going on. My mom went upstairs to the attic, and she was going through all this. There was just like stuff in the attic. So she grabbed all the pile of stuff, and as she's going through it, she ran into a box, and the box had tissues and hair and clippings of nails, like a voodoo box, a Ouija board, wrapped up balls of towelettes and stuff. It was really weird. My mom obviously knew what it was. We were like, we didn't know, like, what is that stuff, you know? So she disposed of it, and she was like, I'm done. We'll save this for another time. She prayed, and she locked up. Then she went back up there. A little while after, I would say a couple weeks went by, she went back up, and everything was back. The same stuff she disposed of was there again. And I think that's what also sparked like we need to get out of here, like now. That in itself was very disturbing. One of the major things that I didn't know until we moved is a demon that we all saw, all of my siblings, including myself. There was a guy that would walk, we would say walk, but in reality he was hovering in front of our house. And the best description I can give of this person is the watch sign, the neighborhood watch. It had like one of those hats, and he would tip his head down like this, and then he would hover across just straight ahead. And then when you noticed him, he would stop, and then he would turn his head like that, like straight to you. Never seen his face, nothing else. That was just it. And it freaked us all out. My mom, when we moved from the house, it came up in conversation, and she told me that it was me and my little sister talking about this, and she's like, you know, I never told you guys this, but you guys all saw the same thing. And then we were like, what's how? And she was like, you described it all the same. It's always been the same. She was like, every single one of you. She's like, some of you saw it more, some of you saw it less, but you guys have seen the same thing. She was like, that's how I knew you guys, my kids weren't lying. So that was another situation in that house. That house, I was actually molested in. And that brought another demon to my life. That was, I think that's when I myself became angry, because the person that did this would tell me, don't say anything. So to me, it was like, all right, it's a secret, but now I'm confused. And now I'm getting more bad dreams. I remember in this one bedroom, I would have sleep paralysis multiple times a week. And during that time, my parents started looking at houses. The house was occupied, my mom found out. I don't know what her sources was. She did tell me once, or she actually told me twice, that she was told that the house was occupied by practicing witches before we were there, which is most likely why we had that.
Before we move on to like other things, I want to stop you here because I have a lot of questions I want to ask. We've talked about a lot of things, so I would like to at least spend some time revisiting some of the things we've talked about to get some clarity on something. So I'll try to do my best to remember everything that was said. One thing that I wanted to comment on is I found it interesting that the house you grew up in before you moved in was habited by witches. Witches lived there. And that explains a lot of the things that you would see. If I were to make up a theory on what happened, I think it's pretty clear to see what would have happened. The voodoo box obviously would have been from them. It also would explain the room in the basement, because most occultists, witches, they will take like a specific room and dedicate that for their rituals, and so that would explain why that room felt different. And so that was a thing that you said that I thought was interesting. I also wanted to get an idea of how old you were when you moved in and when these things were happening. You talked about, probably a range of years, but if you can maybe explain a little bit of that, like how old you were, that would be helpful.
I would say I was maybe I moved in 4 or 5.
And you moved, because I think you were about to talk about when you moved out. So was there anything that happened as you moved out, and how old were you when you moved out?
I moved out, I think I was 11 when I left the house. And it was liberating because of everything bad that happened. But it didn't end there, unfortunately. Like I said, you'd think all of this scary, crazy stuff would stop. It was at rest for a little while, I would say. But the portion of me being molested kind of followed me, that darkness. And I remember on my last school year before going to middle school, I was worried because I was going to a whole new school and I was already like scared. So I tried to make friends and I end up going to school. Everything seems okay the first couple days. And then suddenly I'm heavily bullied, like heavily bullied, by one person in particular that was my best friend the summer before. We were supposed to be best friends during the school year, and I don't know what happened. And she would bully me really bad, and because she became popular, I guess, it became like hell on earth for me. I've never in my life felt so... I did not know what sadness and depression was until that moment. And I became depressed, and I spent the whole entire year just fighting for my own sanity. I would get hit, I would get bullied, teachers would laugh at me, people would try to hit me in the stairwell, push me down the stairs. They would do everything that you would see in the movies and stuff. Was so real, and it was so intense. I was just the laughing stock of the school, and I became, I guess, suicidal and sad and depressed, and I didn't want to live. And I remember in 7th grade, or at the end of 6th grade, I told myself, I need to do something about this, because next year I don't want people to be mean to me. And I forgot exactly what I was doing, that I saw a magazine that said something about spells. It was a Cosmopolitan magazine. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe, because he's scary, Satan's scary, and I know that's a Satan thing. What if he could help me? And I told myself, maybe, you can find some relief with Satan. And I went home and I started telling myself, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to get them back. The whole summer, I remember I would sit in my room and I would cry, but like I'd make myself cry. And I'd get so mad, and I'd say, there's a way I can make something in my mind to get them. And I didn't have access to like computers or anything like that where I can just go on and, type, spells. I didn't know what to look for. So I would make myself mad and cry, and I would grab I've always kind of like had like edges of sharpness in my nails, so I would grab and put my nails in my skin and pull up from my legs, because nobody really saw my legs. I never showed my legs, so I would do it on my legs and my thighs. I would cut through really hard. I would take pens and I'd make them really hot at the tip, and I'd just stab myself with it. And I think that that was a way to get his attention, like, I'm trying to call you. And I did that for some time. And 7th grade rolled around. People still bullied me. And I remember I told myself, okay, I'm going to try something new. Now I have like my actual privacy. So I would grab this candle. I had this old candle in my room, and when my parents weren't looking, I would grab like these little matchboxes and light my candle, and I would shut off my lights, and I would go like this and sit in front of the candle, but I would try really hard to not breathe at the candle, because I wanted Satan to rather blow the candle out or move it so I know he's here with me. So I would do that, and I'd ask him, please help me. Like, I need you to do something for me. Whatever you want, you know? And I started telling him that I'll give him what he wants if he helps me get these people back. And to me, it was like, I didn't believe that there was a God, really, because why, if God was love, why did I have all these issues? Why was I going through these evil things? Why do I feel like this? Why am I confused? You know, I had a lot of questions to God, and I wasn't getting answers from him. So to me, I was like, there is no God, but there might be a Satan. Maybe that's the God. And I started doing a little bit more digging, and because I felt fear doing this and summoning him, I knew that he was going to do something for me, and I knew it was close, and I would always tell myself, I know he's going to do it. I know he's going to do it. I bought all black clothes because I felt inside of me that I needed to play the part. I bought my black clothes. I convinced my mom to get me spikes to put on my wrists. I wore like the little platforms with all black. And I remember one day a girl called me fat. And I looked at her and I said like a weird, like satanic sounding tongue, because I knew that it was like spell stuff that people say. I made it up. And then she looked at me and she was like, you're a creep. And because like she walked away from me, I felt like powerful. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be like a witch, I think. So I convinced myself, because I'm supposed to be a witch, that I know Satan's going to do something for me now. Went back home, and then I did it again. This happened for, I would say, nearly a year before I had basically enough of it, and I was like kind of giving up. I still wear my black, I still do whatever, but I stopped lighting the candle. I noticed people weren't being nice still, but I was like, whatever, maybe I need to give it a rest. During this gap, I remember one morning, my sister and me, we had a sleepover in my bedroom. I woke up and she was next to me, and she said something that I said something in my sleep. And I looked at her and she had this white, and I don't know if this is like the wrong terminology as a Christian or not, so excuse me, but it was like an aura. She had like a white aura on her. And she was talking to me, telling me how God needs me to stop what I'm doing and to come to him because he's not happy with me. And this is my sister talking to me. She's on the floor on her mattress, and saying this to me? And she goes, because if you don't, you're done for. She goes, your place is not in heaven. She goes, do you understand that, Lori? She goes, you're doing something bad. And then I look at my hand, and my hands have a black aura on it. And I look at her, and I was like, why are you saying that to me? And then she looked at me, she starts laughing, and she goes, I don't even know what I just said. And I'm like, I was like, are you okay? She goes, sometimes God talks to people and you don't know what he's saying. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I kind of brushed it off. And then I was like, whatever it is you're saying, like, I get it. I'm not doing anything bad though. And she was like, well, whatever it is, I guess God's not happy with you. And I was like, can I tell you something? And she goes, what? I was like, there's a white shadow, like a white light over you. And she goes, really? I was like, yeah. And she goes, there's a black one over you. And I was like, I know. The day went on. Everything was fine. Normal day. It was actually really, really nice day. It was towards the fall time. And the night was falling, and we would love to run outside barefoot. So we went outside with our golden retriever. We were running up and down the roads. My mom was in the front yard watching us, and suddenly I felt ill. And I'm like, ooh, I don't feel good. I was like, I have like a weird cramp in my body, and I feel sick. Like I want to vomit or something. And my mom's like, okay, so go get ready for bed. I go inside, I shower. I asked my sister, do you want to watch TV in the living room and fall asleep? And she goes, yeah. So we're ready. We pop the TV on. And before I know it, I think I fall asleep. I think. I'm not exactly sure. It feels unreal. But I was woken up, I want to say. And it seems like a dream, but I'm almost firm on the fact that this was not a dream. This was a reality that God allowed me to have. And I woke up. If anyone has ever seen the movie Silent Hill, it is the best description I can give you when she wakes up and she's in this gray world with ash falling from the sky that looks like snow, but it's ash. Nothing was falling from the sky, but it was ashy. Like everything looked gray. And I'm sitting there. I sit up from the couch. I look to my left, and my sister's there. The TV's on, but it's really quiet. It's like mute. There's no sound. The sound even from me moving was non-existent. I get up. I don't even turn on a light. I just get up. And I walk through the hallway, and I walk into my room, and I'm looking around. My bed's on the floor. It's slightly different. My walls are clear. Some drawings are on my wall because I love to draw, so I draw my wall. And I see 2 dolls and a horse on my bed, like toys. And I sit beside them, and I pick them up, and they're 2 naked female Barbie dolls. And I put them on the horse, and I'm playing like a child, and I'm making the horse like move, and suddenly I feel like I don't know, like a presence I've never felt what I felt. I can't even describe what I felt. I can't. I just remember, it sounds so fake, but I promise it's not like this heat. It's like a dry Las Vegas heat. And I look over to my right, because I'm kind of sitting facing a wall on my bed that's on the floor. And suddenly, to my right, appears a hole in the ground. And from the hole appears this man. He's a very handsome man. He's a buzz cut man. And he looks at me. And all the hairs in my body stood up. I knew who this was. And it was Satan. The man that I've been asking for a long time is here. And he's not here in a good way. And he's not here to get revenge for me, for my bullies. He's here for me. And I feel it. In front of me, I actually missed such an important part. Right before he popped up, there was like, and this is gonna sound fake, but I promise it's not. It was like a hologram of everything bad that's happened, that I've caused, everything that I've done, even my thoughts, the things that, like, anything, even like a swear word, like it was like a lightning speed playing in front of me, almost like what people say would happen on Judgment Day, like God's gonna play a video, they say. It was like that, and it sounds so fake, but I can't tell you the millions of things I saw in front of me before this satanic figure popped up. And it's looking at me in the eye, and I can't stop looking at this thing. I can't blink, I can't look away. And suddenly he tilts his head like this, and he just smirks at me. Like, and then his smile gets bigger and bigger, and so big that he has more teeth than I could ever count. And the tiniest speck of red in his eye, and I'm being dragged at this point, and I can feel my butt like almost popping off the corner of the bed, and I can't breathe now. It's hot, and it gets hotter and hotter, and he's claiming me, like he's telling me I'm here for you. And I don't want to believe in God. I don't care at this point, right? But the first thing that comes out of my mouth is Jesus. And I'm like, Jesus, like in my brain. That's all I could say. And it's gone. It's fully gone. And I'm on the couch. I open my eyes and I go like that. And it's like the biggest breath I could ever take. But what comes back is this, it's hard to describe. It's like a tar and like a ash at the same time. I'm vomiting this thing and it's over me and I'm seeing it come out. And it's just massive. It keeps coming out and I can't stop. I can't breathe. My neck feels hot. It's big. And I feel like I'm dying. And it's above me finally. And I see in the mirror, because we had a mirror in front of our a walkway, and I see in the mirror behind me there's a corner, and the corner has like a light that just pops out and then kind of comes back. And I get up, I look around, I could hear the TV, my sister's sleeping. I sit on the couch, I'm sweating, just sweat. I can feel the beads of sweat, and I just start crying. I'm like, that wasn't a dream. I was like, nobody's gonna believe me, that wasn't a dream. And I get up, and I remember I get up, and I sit back down. And then I get up, and I walk over to my mom's room. Every mom hates to be woken up at 3 a.m. So I go in there tiptoeing, I'm like, Mom. And I tap her and she's like, what? And I'm like, I need to talk to you. And she's like, oh my God. So she gets up and I'm crying. And she goes, why are you crying? And I was like, Mom, I gotta talk to you. And I was like, you go first. I remember she walks into the room, she turns on the light. Everything's normal now. I explained the whole thing to my mom. And as I'm explaining to my mom, we're sitting on the bed. I'm talking to my mom. She's praying for me. We're doing everything that a Christian family would do during a moment like this. And there's demons flying from my closet out of the window that she's sitting next to. And I look at my mom and I go, Mom, you're not going to believe me. And she goes, why? And I was like, because there's demons flying out of my room right now. And I always felt inside that my mom didn't really believe me. Like, I felt like maybe she wanted to believe me, but she probably also thought it was crazy, especially because of the way I was dressing, the way I was acting. She never knew that I tried to summon Satan the way I was doing for so long. She never knew my intention, my real intention behind the way I was, or what got me to where I am, why I was so confused and angry. She never knew the real reasons. So was I really crazy? You know, it was probably her thought process. And I never wanted to sit here convincing her, but I felt like she didn't believe me. And I never wanted to tell anybody my story because of this. And I'm like, if my mom doesn't believe me, no one's going to believe me.
I mean, I've heard enough weird stories for me to not be too shaken up by that. But it's hard for someone that's never experienced any of that to believe or to comprehend. But I know there's a lot of people that experience some of these things, especially kids. And there seems to be something with kids. It was only the kids that were seeing some of the things in your house. But this is a trend that kids see more, and as we grow up, however that works, we seem to lose some of that ability. But I know a lot of kids have seen weird stuff, and then now they're adults, probably, you know, some of the people listening, and they kind of just suppress that and like, no, it never happened. But if you revisit some of these things, I think a lot of people would have maybe not the same experiences that you had, but definitely like weird things like that. So, well, thank you for sharing. For the sake of the people that have experienced weird things like this, that know that they're not the only ones. I think that's really helpful for them. So if we move on to the next part of your story, you've told me an encounter you had with, I want to say a demon, but I will describe that as a faceless man, because I think that's what you described it to me before we talked today. Can you explain in the timeline of all the things that you talked about when that came in, and then, you know, talk about what that encounter was like?
So a little while after the Satan's encounter, there was some calmness, I would say. I had a little peace. I was still scared. I didn't sleep alone for a little while. I didn't want to be in my room. I would say a year and a half went by. I remember the leaves were falling. I was in school and I didn't feel good. I wanted to go home. I hated school. If I stubbed my toe, I wanted to just go home. So, but I didn't feel good. Like, I felt like faint. So I was like, I want to go home. I called my mom. Mom, I want to go home. She's like, well, I can't come pick you up. You could walk or you can stay in school. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll walk. My brother was home. So she's like, he's going to be home. Call me when you get there. I'm like, okay. So I leave the school and I'm walking down the big hill. And as I am turning the corner from the big hill, I'm looking down at my feet, like I never really looked up. And I'm just walking. And I know I see like somebody else walking like across the street. But I don't think anything. It's people walk all the time. Like, there's a school. So I'm walking, and then I'm finally like moving. I hear, hey you. Did not pay any attention to it. I just kept walking. I'm getting closer and closer. Hey you, girl. And this is like a Haitian accent, like a deep Haitian. And I'm like, this person talking to me? And I don't want to look because I don't want to look. I'm ignorant and I'm a teenager and I don't want to look. So I just keep walking. Hey, you girl. So I look over and I want to go like, what? And then I double look and it sounds psychotic, but this thing has no face. I double looked and this thing is not a normal thing. It has no face. It's wearing a red sweater. The hands are in their pocket and like their front pockets of the sweater. Black pants. The hood is on. It has like the figure of a manish. It has like a bell bottoms on, like a girl. It sounds kind of like a girl, but almost huge like a man, and it's like 7 or 8 feet tall, maybe bigger. And I run over to this car that's at the stop sign. I'll never forget. It's an older man. He had glasses on. I knock at his window. I'm like, oh my God, do you see that? Do you see that? He looks at me and just like drives off. And I go to get onto another car as I'm looking. It drives off again. So I cross the street. I'm not even looking at this point. Cross the street and I start power walking. And I look behind me one more time. Hey, girl, get over here. And that is when I was like, oh my God. So I turned the corner. The second I turn the corner, I start bolting. I'm going up a hill. I'm obviously not athletic at this time. I'm not a runner at all. The hill is kind of steep, so I'm not like going very fast. But the second I hit like the hump, I pick up my speed because I hit the hump thinking this person's not going to see me. I look behind me. Hey, girl. Again, they're following me. They're on the road. I see the tip of their head coming up. As I'm walking, or I'm running up the hill, I'm running up the hill still. I'm approaching my house, kind of. I can see my house. I turn around one more time. Hey, girl, get over here. But like the voice, it sounds like it's not strong, but it is a strong voice, like raspy and strong, like dominant, like angry, like it's mocking me. And I finally get to my house. I run up the stairs and I'm slamming on the door. I'm hitting my brother's window. I know he's home. I'm like, please open the door. And I'm trying not to scream because I don't want this thing to follow me to my house. He's not opening the door whatsoever. I'm starting to cry now, like straight tears, like just all coming down my face. And I'm slamming on the door again and again and again. He's not opening. I look over. This thing is still coming up the road. And this time I run down the stairs and I jump over all these rocks that are on the side of my house, and I jump over the fence and I rip open my porch door. The door, I remember, stood broken till we moved from that house. And now I'm in the sunroom and I'm slamming on the sunroom door, and I peek over and I see, hey, girl, like this time, like almost creepy. And I see the top of their head again. He, she, whatever this thing is approaching the front of my house now. And finally I see my brother, and he's grabbing the key to open the door, and he's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? And I'm slamming, I'm like, please, please. He opens the door. I was like, it's following me. There's something behind me and it doesn't have a face. It's following me. And he's like, what are you talking about? I grab a knife and I rip open the front door, and it is gone. And he comes out and he's looking. He's like, what's following you? And again, I'm sitting there like, no one's going to believe me. I'm looking around. He came outside with me. He's at the sidewalk area where my house is. He's looking around. He's like, what's following you, Lori? And I was like, nothing. I go inside. I call my mom. Like, Mom, I got to talk to you. Could you please come home? Eventually, my mom gets home, and she's asking me, are you sure it wasn't one of the people? Because there was a small home, like a small little insane asylum for people about 2 blocks over, kind of near the school. And sometimes they do get out. And I looked at my mom and I was like, Mom, this thing didn't have a face. And this thing was like 8, 9 feet tall. I don't know how tall it was. It was like huge. I don't know. And she just looks at me, and again, like, it makes me nauseous thinking about it, because again, I could feel that she's like thinking I'm crazy. I'm trying to explain it to her, and I'm like, Mom, this thing looked like this. It followed me, and I tried to get help from people. Nobody was there to help me, and I'm running, and nobody's listening. And now nobody's going to believe me. And she goes, no, I believe you. And in my mind, I'm just like, no, she doesn't. She doesn't believe me. I don't feel like she believes me. Like, you know, when you feel like somebody's kind of like, you need to sleep, you know? It felt like that for my mom, the person I thought that at this point she would believe me with. We even drove around the neighborhood looking to see if we found this person. If I'm not mistaken, I think my mom even tried to get the contact for the house to see if anybody escaped, to let them know that I was followed home, just to kind of keep me at ease. I don't know if she ever did or not, but I know it wasn't them. I know it wasn't. I know what I saw, and it was a faceless demon following me. It was faceless, and it was out for me. Nobody saw it, I guess, but me, apparently.
It's tough. It's terrifying just even listening to it. I can't imagine what it was back then. But the part that is the saddest is how you really don't have anyone to go to when it comes to these things. And if it had been a person, you can, first of all, defend yourself, or try, you know, or you can have someone else, or you can hide. You can't hide from these things. Like, even inside of the house, like, it's not like that really would have been an issue if it had wanted to follow you in there. So it's this helplessness that a lot of people feel when they encounter something demonic, that there is nothing to go to. You had, though, the time before that you talked about the vision or dream or whatever that was, when you saw the being that you called Satan. You called out to Jesus and it stopped immediately. Were you thinking about it that time? Did you try that time?
No. Nope. God did not run through my brain when I was running from this thing.
What I also wanted to comment on is you said it sounded like a Haitian man, I think. Well, it was a little confusing because you said like man and woman, which like androgynous kind of thing. But the Haitian part, it also like connects to voodoo. Voodoo is like is a kind of witchcraft that is predominantly in Haiti. So it connects then to that, which also connects to, you know, the items in the house. And so it really seemed like that was the demon that was inside of the house when you were younger. I also was wondering, I mean, you talked about being involved in, well, trying witchcraft, not that it necessarily worked, but, you know, trying it out, and then there's a dream, there's this. Did you continue in some of these practices, some of these witchcraft things? What happened in the years, you know, following that encounter?
Actually, no. I've always had this really small leather Bible my mom gave me a really long time ago. I still have it till this day. I started opening it up and leaving it on my dresser in the morning and at night. Every night I would kind of glimpse at it. Sometimes I'd read a verse. And it made me feel a little bit more protected. Because at this point, yes, I remembered that there is a God, that there might be a much bigger God than I think. I've had these encounters where it's like God basically proved himself to me, and I still had my doubts, but I had dabbled in with the darkness too much to almost like want to let go fully, because I still had so much hate in me, I think. Like, I knew there was a God now, but I just didn't want to believe that that was the God.
Did that develop? Did that change with the years and with age?
Yeah, actually, a little while after that incident, I would say right after graduating high school is when I had my first major encounter with God himself.
Please share.
Yes. So this was a huge thing. I was just a regular teenager. I think it would be between 18 and 19. I was going out, doing my partying stuff as a teenager does. And I was dating a guy, I remember. And he was like this first real boyfriend. And I remember I caught him with a girl. And those memories of me being bullied and being molested and always feeling like disgusted with myself and not good enough or ugly. I just felt so unloved and lonely so much in my life that brought back that feeling after I saw that. And I was so sad one night. I got home and I was in my bedroom, I was crying, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go sleep in the living room. I was like, I don't want to be in my room. So I went to the living room and I'm hanging out and I start crying. I remember on the couch and I'm angry with God. I'm like, oh, if there is such a God, why is it that you don't let me be loved? Like, why am I so unloved and I'm so disgusting? Like, I hate myself. Like, I hate you. You hate me. You don't care about me. Like, I'm literally sitting here, I'm mocking God. I'm like, oh yeah, you can't give me a hug. And I remember I said to God, you're a God with love. You're a God about love, love, love. Why don't you come and give me a hug and show me what real love is? And I was like, oh, you're right. You can't. And I'm mocking God in my head. And I'm like I'll never forget, I'm laying upwards like this and tears, I could feel them rolling down my eyes. I was like, there is no God. I was like, there's no God. I was like, he doesn't care about me. I was like, I'll never get a hug from God because there is no God. And that's all I said. I fall asleep and I wake up to my mom. My mom's just kind of rubbing my head like this. She goes, what are you doing on the couch? I'm like, I just want to sleep on the couch, Mom. And she goes, okay. You want to come to church with me? Nah. And she goes, okay. Well, if you change your mind, let me know. She goes to the kitchen. She's having her coffee and whatever. And then I sit up on the couch and I'm like, you know what? I have nothing better to do. If I stay home, I'm going to cry, and I don't want to cry. So I was like, I'll just go to church. So I walk over to her. I'm like, Mom, I'll go with you. And she goes, okay. Well, I'm leaving in like 10 minutes. So you got like 10 minutes to get ready. I'm like, okay. I go to my room, I get ready, and we're in church. I'm seated on the chair, and I'm kind of like ignorantly seated. Like I don't want to be here. I'm just here to take some time out of my Sunday. And they had a guest pastor that day come in to preach, and he walks in. Everybody's talking, and they sat down. And then he puts his hands on that little thing that they preach on over, and he goes, I was here excited to talk about one thing, and then he goes, but God put in my heart that there's two people here that don't believe in God. Two people. He goes, we're gonna change what I came here for. So he preaches and he's talking. We made eye contact several times. And in my soul, I knew me and one other gentleman that was in the room were the non-believers. I can just feel it radiating off of both of us. Like, we don't want to be here. We don't believe. We're just here because our moms are here. And I'll never forget that feeling. Like I knew. And it was almost like it felt like witchy of me. Like, this is who I know. This is my people. I know my people type of thing. And he closes the service. He's praying. And they were doing a Spanish prayer as well. And they always close out at church with singing and praise. So my mom always gets up, and she was part of the praise group. So she's singing and praising. And she has a part where she sings. So she was in the front. And oh my God, my heart's like pounding right now. She's singing, and this part gets me really emotional, just letting you know. She's singing, and she goes, oh, she puts her hands like this. And she's talking in tongue, and she goes like this, and she starts swaying, and her body's moving. And I'm looking at her, and it doesn't look like my mom anymore. And I'm like, and suddenly she goes, oh, daughter. And my eyes like bulge out of my face. I know she's talking to me. She goes, oh, daughter, again. And she puts her hands here. And she goes, how I've watched you cry. This is so hard. And I know it's not my mom. She goes, she lifts her arms open, and she goes, I've always loved you. And then she goes, oh, daughter, here's your hug. She goes, I love you. Here's your hug. And she just lifts her arms. And her arms look like eagles. Like, oh my God, her arms are huge. And I know she's talking to me. And I'm like I'm crying at this point. And I can't keep my eyes off my mom. And it's just not my mom. And then I want to get up. I want to get up so bad. And she goes, again, she goes, I have your hug. Till this day, I regret it. And I never got up. I was so stupid and ignorant. I'm like, I'm not gonna get up. I don't believe you. And I'm shaking in my seat. And then she closes her arms, and she goes, oh God. She goes, oh, daughter, I love you. And then she starts swaying. She goes, I love you so much. And I know still, I'm like, oh my God, like, why haven't I gotten up? Why can't I get up? And at this point, I'm like scared. Like I did something wrong. I'm like, I messed up. And then they close the service, and I come up to my mom. I clear my face. I'm like, Mom, can I ask you something? She goes, what? And I was like, do you know what you say? And she goes, what do you mean? Do I know what I say? I was like, do you know what you say? Like when you talk in tongues, when you say things up there. And she goes, sometimes no. And I was like, where's that guy? Like, I'm mad now. Like, I'm mad. Because now I'm looking at my mom. My mom's my mom. And I missed an opportunity. And I hate myself right now. And then she's like, he's in his office. They go. He said you can go talk to him. Like they did the whole messenger thing, and I was like, okay. I go to his office and I sit down with him, and I was like, that message was for me. And we have this long conversation, and he told me about these insane encounters that he's had that are very similar to mine. He promised me to never talk about them because they're just his testimony he's never wanted to talk about. So I was like, okay. But he told me, he believed me. This one person that I just met, I'd never seen him a day in my life until that day. He said, I believe everything that you said. He said, I believe everything. He's like, and I have proof. I believe it. And he proved to me that he believed me. And from that day, I mean, till this day, I think about that hug. And I'm like, why didn't I get up? Like, there's like this hug that I've asked God for. And I've mocked God, and I said all these mean things to God. And then he got up there in front of all these people and said how much he loved me after I hated him so much after I said all these mean things. And then he gave me this encounter that I'll never forget in my life. I can't deny him. I'll never be able to deny him after that.
That's incredible. It's so touching to hear about this. I can't even say the day before. It was a few hours before, it seems like, that you were saying, like, oh God, like you can't even give me a hug because you're not real. And then he shows up in your mom, just offering that. Your mom wasn't even in the house, you said, when you were saying these things. You were talking, I think you were talking in your head, you said before.
Yeah. Everyone was asleep. It was like 3 a.m.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I said it all in my head.
How do you explain that, right?
You don't.
You don't. That's probably the right answer. It's incredible. So when it comes to God, obviously this, I want to say, was many years ago.
Yeah.
How has that, developed? Where you at with God today?
I think that was a step into a new life. And, as sinners, we're going to fall in and out. But that's been my foundation. Like, remember who was there when you felt like no one was there. That's actually, I go to that so often when I feel like I have nothing and no one and I want to turn from God. It's almost like he nudges me and he's like, remember, And if it weren't for that day, if it weren't for all that hatred that got built up, I wouldn't be able to say today, like, my testimony wouldn't be what it is today at all without that moment.
It would just be darkness, and it'd be scary. It would be a scary story, like a horror story, and then not much more of that. And personally, I don't know. Some people like that. I think there's empty. It's
very empty.
So this is why I like your story, because of the redemptive aspect about it at the end. I'm curious, do you think that the encounters you had when you were younger in the haunted house and in the, encounter with Satan and the Faceless Man, do you think that plays a role in your relationship with Jesus today?
Absolutely. Before I wrote in to talk about my testimony, God has ordered me to do this, and actually just a couple days ago I was saving this to express now. I have written in a journal when I was younger, I am going to tell my testimony and millions will hear it. And I've told my mom that, and I completely forgot. And God reminded me just 2 days ago. He woke me up and said, you said this.
You never told me that, so that's pretty awesome.
So God had a reason for everything.
I believe it. Lori, to end this part, because you have a lot more that happened to you that I want to discuss, but to end this part of your testimony, if you could give one message to the people listening, what would be the most important thing you would want them to know?
Oh, man.
My strength comes from training.
I heard somewhere that you cannot
Are you so sure of that?
sell what isn't yours and meaning your soul. So you're never too far gone. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how you say it. God doesn't care. He wants you as you are, where you are, tears, hatred, candles for Satan and all. He is here ready for you. He is King of Kings. He is ready to take you back.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Almost False podcast. As I hinted at towards the end, there's a lot more to Lori's story than what we just talked about. She went in depth on every encounter she remembers from the haunted house because yes, there were more than what you just heard. She also had some recent demonic encounters after receiving a cursed toy as a gift. And that's part of a whole other episode for our members, which revolved around the miracle that kept her alive after she had 26 blood clots in her lungs, and doctors only gave her a few minutes to live. It's an unbelievable story, and it's linked in the description if you want to check it out. If you're not already a member, there's a 7-day free trial that you can use to watch that story or any of the other extra content that we have on the website. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed.
Was that a fiend as well?
I've never seen one like that before. Something strange. There's so many of them.
With STD rates around the world and in this country, Christianity.
Oh, I see. Wait
The more Christian
Wait,
states have
so
more
you-
STDs, the more Christian countries have more STDs.
So, what demographic do you think is the most polyamorous? Would you say homosexuals?
I don't know.
Homosexuals, Richard?
So the relevant metric would be
Richard,
numbers.
is it homosexuals?
So no, you're asking about rate. We're talking about raw numbers.
I'm
There
just
are
asking
more,
you, are there more polyamorous people
Yes.
who are... Yes, thank you.
No.
And what are the STD
No,
rates
no,
of those polyamorous people?
No, you're wrong. If that happened, if the country actually voted to destroy itself, I would have to leave.
You say the use of force rather than persuasion in democracy. That's what fascism is. If people utilize democracy to limit democracy, it's still democracy.
Yeah, a fascist democracy.
Yeah, that's not fascism.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's a fascist democracy?
This is going to be a big, beautiful debate. Want to let you know, our next debate conference is tentatively planned at the University of Texas, San Antonio. Modern Day Debate is very excited to expand onto university campuses, as well as if anyone has a church. That's also another great venue. We do love Holiday Inn. They've been fantastic in hosting our debate cons, but we do think that if we expand to other venues as well, it will open a lot of doors. So if you happen to have any connections at a university, like a student group, or maybe you're a professor, and you're like, hey, yeah, we'd love to host a debate conference, or just a one-off debate, reach out at moderndaydebate@gmail.com. That includes if you're listening online, as we want Modern Day Debate to expand to all the venues. And with that, I am very excited to get this debate started on Christianity or secular humanism, which is best for society. Now, very important, in order for us to put these events on, sponsors such as Zach Gelpy from Main First Project make this possible. We are very excited to partner with them. The reason being, we have shared values of free speech as well as fair debate. I've gotten to know Zach. I'm going to welcome them up here.
You guys seem pretty great. Good. The reason you...
Starting with, Dr. Richard Carrier is a world-renowned author and speaker. As a professional historian, political worldview of secular naturalism. Please welcoming Andrew.
On the street
is the view that we should behave as individuals and organize as societies to maximize.
That we are ready for liftoff. We are going to get this started with Dr. Richard Carrier's opening statement. The timer is set for you, Dr. Carrier, for 15 minutes.
All right. Secular humanism, as I define it, is the view that we should behave as individuals and organize as societies to maximize universal human well-being, according to evidence and reason. And that means it places evidence over any other authority or ideology, and it puts spreading human life satisfaction above any other interest. Only human interests matter above all, and only evidence can determine how to best achieve them. By contrast, there are 1,000 different Christianities teaching 1,000 different ways to be and to organize society. And all have the Bible on their side, all pick and choose what to follow and what not. So how do we determine which one is correct? If it's by evidence, then that's just secular humanism. If it's not by evidence, then we can't know it's best or even true. And most Christianity does not choose based on evidence but ideology and tradition. We can also compare results. Christianity has been tested for thousands of years. Whenever society-wide, and especially when in control of government, it always increases war and oppression and depresses human well-being. By contrast, when Christianity is set aside and policy and decisions are made based solely on evidence and reason, we got the first human rights-based constitutional democracy since the pagans invented the idea, and Christians refused to re-adopt it 2,000 years ago. Christianity was built to abandon evidence-based morality and politics, and to replace it with toxic superstitions and false fanaticism that ruined almost everything about society. Secular humanism is about no longer listening to those ideas and instead reclaiming evidence-based morality and politics. The observed effect of that decision is seen across the developed free world, from Japan to Sweden, Taiwan to Finland, Australia to Canada, and beyond. The United States is a bit behind in all of those metrics, but it's still mired in Christian nationalism and all its bad decisions. But we could catch up. We just have to choose evidence over superstition and reason over authoritarianism. The earliest example of this dual test and its different outcomes was the United States Constitution and its Bill of Rights, which moved in the correct direction, literally outlining half of the 10 Commandments and establishing evidence and reason, the only basis for law and justice. And from that derived the most important humanist conclusion about politics, replacing violence as the principal threat or mechanism for resolving conflict with free speech and democracy, a concept we since expanded. Before that, the European Wars of Religion, known as the Wars of Reformation, had been tearing Europe up for 300 years. The American colonies were also founded in part to escape religious persecution. And before all that, the West was constantly entangled in holy wars since the fall of Rome. The death penalty is widespread and liberally applied, not only across several positions. Elite violence and abuse against the poor and the enslaved was common. Apart from all that normalized violence, oppression was scarce. Freedoms were scarce or limited, and most people lived in some degree of poverty, especially when we count slaves and serfs. When poverty for some after the Industrial Revolution fell to 25% of society, that was dependent on the backs of slave-based industry at home or abroad, and otherwise financed by conquest. And when those slaves are counted, the actual poverty level was still around 50%. This is all well established in studies ranging from Martin Ravaillaon's The Economics of Poverty, History and Measurement, and Measurement and Policy, and Michel Malot's The Poor in the Middle Ages, an essay in social history, as well as Guido Alfani's Economic Inequality in Pre-Industrial Times for the Journal of Economic Literature. That removing religion and replacing it with human-centered evidence-based reasoning would have resolved or prevented almost all of this has also been well established in modern scholarship, ranging from Hector Avalos' study Fighting Words, The Origins of Religious Violence and the Reality of Religious Violence from Biblical to Modern Times, to Steven Pinker's Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined, and Michael Shermer's The Moral Arc, How Science Makes Us Better People, which all summarize extensive findings in the field of history. This difference is because in reality the Christian Bible is full of bad ideas about how to fix all this, which instead would implement it only perpetuated and exacerbated it through thousands of years of failure. And that has been well established by studies ranging from, again, Hector Avalos' The Bad Jesus, The Ethics of New Testament Ethics, and Slavery, Abolitionism, and the Ethics of Biblical Scholarship, on up to Phil Zuckerman's Society Without God, What the Least Religious Nations Can Tell Us About Contentment, now in its second edition, and several sociologist studies in the non-religious understanding secular people and societies, and beyond doubt, the secularization of society, and more. If you want to look into this, I cite more studies online, including Justin Brierley and The Fall of Christianity, which summarizes the well-tested material differences between Christian and secular humanist-oriented societies. Further demonstrating that everything good that has happened since the American Revolution came from abandoning the Bible and replacing it with secular, moral, and political philosophy, I demonstrate that in my article, That Christian Nation Nonsense, God's Bless Our Pagan Nation. I cover many more examples of things we are now grateful for that were actually pagan, rarely in the Bible, and only reluctantly adopted by Christians, in my article, No, Tom Holland, It Wasn't Christian Values That Saved the West. So those are the places you can go to follow up on this. But as one illustration among hundreds, consider the sociological studies of Gregory Paul, Gary Jensen, and R.G. Del Montagne, all of which I cite in my article, Which Worldview Produces the Better World? These show that statistically, the more Christian any developed democratic state, province, or country is, usually the more income inequality there is, the more crime, the more poverty, the more drug abuse and teen pregnancy and illness and death. And the rate of violent crime often increases with the region's religiosity, especially murder. And there's no correlation with atheism. By contrast, the less religious a developed democratic society, the more we see universal caring for the sick and the poor, and less murder, less inequality, longer lifespans, even better healthcare outcomes and at lower cost. Christianity does not cause these better outcomes. It never did in 2,000 years. Only evidence-based, human-centered reasoning did this, often against Christian opposition or indifference. Human-centered values ensure we seek to make the lives better of everyone, not just a select or privileged few. It is therefore a boon to all of humanity, the actual goal we should all want, which benefits even the privileged few, because a happier, more prosperous, and less oppressed populace generates a safer and more prosperous environment for all. So every rational and well-informed person wants this, really. And evidence-based solutions to that goal are always superior to others. Because the most important conclusion about everything that rational evidence-based humanism reaches is that it entails admitting we won't always be right about everything and will always improve and correct ourselves to ever more evidentially supported ways of living and governing. We are always testing, getting rid of what doesn't work, investing more in what does. Christianity, by contrast, prioritizes the God over people, and obedience to unelected authorities, and conformity to outdated self-defeating principles. It tends to undermine or suppress rather than foster freedom and critical thinking. And it has a millennia-long legacy of failure to prove it, as I just summarized, and with those differential statistics I just cited, it is demonstrating that failure continually still. As another illustration among hundreds, consider the concept of human and civil rights, which I discuss in my article debunking John Davidson's Pagan America. Human and civil rights exist nowhere in the Bible. Jesus never taught them or anything like them. Neither did any other biblical author. They actually originated with pagan Greeks in the evolution of the Greek confederacies that formed to oppose the tyrannical successors of Alexander the Great. And they were subsequently developed, the concepts, in pre-Christian philosophical thought and adopted by the Roman Republic. They arose out of social contract theory, which today we can establish on an evidence-based foundation of game theory. And this is explicit in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which states that, I quote, "Recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world," which is an empirically determined fact. You cannot reliably have freedom, justice, and peace in the world unless you recognize human rights and dignity. It is an empirical fact that only societies that choose to respect at all levels the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all human beings can reliably expect to enjoy freedom, justice, and peace. And the degree to which a people respects everyone's dignity and treats certain things as everyone's equal and inalienable rights will correlate with the degree to which they all enjoy freedom, justice, and peace, as well as emotional and material prosperity. This is another provable empirical fact, and it has already been demonstrated. The more rights respecting a society, the happier and more socially prosperous it is. In fact, game theory shows that this is probably an inevitable fact of all social systems in all possible worlds, as demonstrated in Robert Axelrod's scientific studies of cooperation. And within ourselves, when rational and informed, we should all want to be this sort of person in our own moral lives, because otherwise our behavior will be self-defeating in our interactions with others, and because upon any rationally honest confrontation with who we are, we will despise ourselves when we become the sort of person we despise, and not the sort of person we like to live near and interact with. Psychological science has shown that hiding behind lies to avoid either of these realizations is ineffectual because everyone needs to be rational to achieve what they want, and that always entails being honest with oneself and not hiding from the truth with false beliefs. I provide a starter bibliography of the relevant science I'm referring to here in my peer-reviewed study for the journal Religions, titled Objective Moral Facts Exist in All Possible Universes, and that includes science establishing the deep dissatisfactions we've documented of even narcissists and sociopaths, compared to the more readily accessible satisfactions of the honest and caring. But key starting points on that include Roger Bergman's Why Be Moral, Walter Sinnott Armstrong's series on moral psychology, and the recent analysis of Stephen Morris, The Complex Relationship Between Morality and Happiness Around the World, which shows that liberal moralities correlate with happier people, while conservative moralities correlate with more miserable people, evincing a direct link between empathy and trustworthiness and every individual's best interests. So, both prongs of secular humanism need to be understood in their different functions. What secular humanism finds to be the best government, and what it finds to be the best way to behave and live, which are not identical. The one must be a certain way to allow the other. When we apply reason to the evidence, we discover that governments should only exist to maintain a civil society in which everyone can pursue their own lives according to their own worldviews, and only managing conflicts between them in the interest of maintaining civility, especially through peace and justice. And by only evidence-based policies, people are then free to advocate for, live by, their own moral conscience. This is what the UN means by respecting rights being essential to ensuring peace and justice, and by the freedom to conduct ourselves in whatever way our reason decides, so long as it is compatible with the civil society needed to maintain those freedoms in the first place. This is the right to speak and think freely, the right to believe in whatever religion or philosophy you choose, the right of association, the right to an equal say in who constructs and manages our government, the right to not lose our life, liberty, or property without due process of law, the right to access food and water and shelter. These are examples of the kinds of rights we have empirically proved necessary for maintaining peace and justice, which everyone needs in order to have reliable access to emotional and material prosperity. Whenever we do it the other way around and coerce an entire morality or worldview on a society, which has to be in disregard of producing and maintaining a civil society, it always ends in a loss of peace and justice, and in result, a widespread loss of prosperity and well-being. So we know empirically why we need a limited government, and not a moralistic one, a government maximizing freedoms as far as won't impair them, to ensure a stable civil society as a backdrop for everyone to experiment and debate and embrace ways of living. While that common government, which we also empirically know to be successful, must serve everyone, not just a select few, and collect and allocate resources at the decision of its shareholders, the people. Because governments are just corporations serving the people with their own bylaws and boards of directors, and every citizen owns one share, and thus has one vote, so no one has more power than another. It thus needs to be neutral as to individual morals and worldview, and only intervene when conflict threatens life, liberty, or property, and only in response to evidence, not to ideology. Everything else is fascism, and fascism always ends badly. I recommend a well-sourced video on that by Digital Gnosis, Fascism and Christian Nationalism. So our founders tried to build our government so that it wouldn't collapse into that failure mode, because as soon as you allow the state to dictate morality and worldview, it's just a matter of time before you get outvoted and morals and worldviews you hate get installed to control you instead. The only way to avoid this is to build a government that is robustly neutral about private ways of life, treating everyone the same, which means not equally, because everyone in their circumstances may differ, but equitably, and which means not in disregard of the evidence and the aim of general human good, but in response to them. And then you should exercise your protected freedom to live your life by the morals you find right, as long as you respect everyone else's rights and thus maintain a civil society of peace and justice. And on that, secular humanism applies the same two principles: human well-being before all else, and only what evidence and reason prove serves that end. So thank you for hearing me out, and I hope you will explore these ideas and the evidence for them further outside of this debate. Don't just believe me or Andrew. Fact-check everything we say, here and on, so you can come to your own informed and rational conclusion. And otherwise, thank you for having me here to make this presentation. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that opening statement. And just a reminder, folks, if you can check your cell phone just to be sure that it's off, we'll kick it over to Andrew for his 15-minute opening statement as well. The floor is all yours, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. This actually won't take 15 minutes. I'm kind of eager to get into the back and forth with Mr. Carrier. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for coming out. It's very kind of you to do and doing this debate with me. Round of applause, huh? I know Smoky Man bad, but you may have been misinformed. So I'm just going to kind of go through a few of these things. I saved my opening just to kind of combat. I knew that my opponent would have kind of a lengthy one. I have a very simple argument today. But he says secular humanism defines as maximizing human well-being. Only humans matter, and there are 1,000 denominations of Christianity. Well, the problem is he's at the mercy of the same exact argument. There are thousands of different ideals around what is the secularism of the future. These ideas that people have are often contrary to each other. You could argue, for instance, that communism is a form of secular humanism, which I'm guessing that my opponent probably doesn't want communism. He says, secularists gave us the Constitution, but then he goes on to say that half of it was based on the Ten Commandments, which I thought was pretty funny. Note that the Constitution also puts bumpers on democracy. That's what it does, right? We're a republic, not a democracy. And that's what Christian nationalists are advocating for, too, bumpers on democracies. We both want the same thing there. I guess Mr. Carrier probably doesn't trust the electorate any more than we do. Or you wouldn't put those bumpers on, right? So he says we can compare results. When Christians are in charge, they start wars. And I just want to note that the United States, the thing that he references, has been essentially at war nonstop since its founding, including the more secular it gets. So it doesn't seem like, at least here, that the evidence supports that. He kind of looks at a few other things, too, like removing religion and replacing it with reason and evidence. I'd like to see how we get to an ought for that, exactly. I would like to point out that reason and evidence-based secularism has also led to things like the sexual revolution, things like 18-year-olds going and selling their ass on OnlyFans, essentially, and problems with outsourcing childcare away from the mother back to the, basically to either state care or having to outsource it away from the mother, which has led to terrible results. So I'm not sure that secularism actually gives us the things that he's stating that it gives us. He says the more Christian any democratic state gets, it's usually worse in things like crime and other things. I would actually argue that mass migration causes most of these issues, not Christianity. And it's also very rational not to have mass migration, by the way. He says rational-based human reason, and he says testing. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. I'm just reading my notes here. So, he sources game theory. Can't wait to get into that, by the way. Peace and justice in the world is possible only through reason, and that's what gives people freedom, justice, and peace. I think that that's something that we need to look at, too. He says psychology science shows hiding behind laws cause issues. That's interesting, but secular humanists hide behind laws when it comes to like basic things like sex. They'll say things are true that aren't true. For instance, like men can be women, things like this. Liberal societies have happier people, and religious societies have less happy people, yet every study I've seen shows that at least individually that's not the case. The more secular a person is, the more mentally ill they tend to become or have bad outcomes associated with them. So, right to believe, he says, a right to association. Do you actually believe in a right to association? I'm not so sure if we get into that you're going to actually believe in a right to associate. He says coercing an entire morality, that's bad because it always results in peace and prosperity when you don't do that. I would just note that a lot of these people in the more secular nations suffer from suicidal empathy, and they do crazy things that have no reason, like mass migration. He also says everything else is fascism, and then he quotes digital gnosis, a guy I know, by the way. And I would like to know what Carrier thinks fascism is. So he says government should treat everybody with equity, another thing I'd like to get into. My basic argument is just this. So if people believe there to be an invisible being that will punish them for wrongdoing, then they will be more likely to both avoid the bad behaviors and promote others to avoid bad behaviors. Seems like a very simple logical argument, and I'm not really sure that my opponent's going to be able to refute it. So one thing I'll say about Richard, he's forgotten more about history than I'll ever know, but I'm not so sure on philosophy that that's the case. So with that, I'd like to just get right into it when you guys are ready.
I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our friends at Maine First Project for sponsoring DebateCon 6, as they also believe in the values of free speech and fair debate. Maine First Project is fighting for conservatism in New England and beyond, so check out their link in the description box below. We're going to jump into the open dialogue. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Yeah, so can we just start with what you think fascism is?
Is it working? Sean. Oh, hold on. Maybe I need to read my own. Here we go. All right. Simplest definition. Fascism is the use of force rather than persuasion and democracy to affect your political will.
And did you make that definition up?
It's based on what everybody else, historians and so forth, talk about. It's the most reduced definition.
It's just, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I got it right. Use of force?
Use of force rather than persuasion and democracy to affect your political will.
So we're not talking about historical fascism here.
All historical fascism. If it's properly called fascism, it fits that model.
Okay. So does the United States do this?
What do you mean? Does the United States do what?
Yeah, use force rather than, I'm sorry.
No, we have democracy. We actually have a say in what the government does.
Well,
usually. I mean,
you can't vote directly on things, right?
No, but you vote for your representative who votes for you. It's
Okay.
the same thing. It's just like a corporation. When you vote for the board of directors, you can control the board of directors by your vote,
Yeah.
and so you get an equal say in what happens.
Let me make sure I write this down. Just want to make sure I got it right. One more time with the definition.
So, use of force rather than persuasion and democracy
Rather
to
than
affect
persuasion
political will.
and democracy. Got it. I'm sorry, I don't want to straw man any of your
Sure,
positions,
sure,
right? Rather than
If you want like an
persuasion
example,
and
my
democracy.
whole intro, my whole discussion was about the importance of rights to maintaining a stable society. Fascist governments use force rather than use force to suppress rights rather than to maintain them.
So like the Second Amendment, for instance?
For instance?
Yeah, for instance. So let's take a look. The use of force rather than persuasion and democracy.
Yeah,
Let's just start with this, right? Inside of democracy, at least the current one that we have, you want bumpers put on it. You don't want direct democracy, right?
Well, we need a rights-based democracy. So I do think direct democracy can work if you actually have the rights-based model. The main reason representative democracy works better, and this is based on evidence, is that representatives can actually, they're paid to have all the time to actually do all the research necessary to make the best decisions in terms of law. And so the average person doesn't have the time or means to do that, so they elect someone to do that for them. And so that actually works better. And so that's evidence-based reason. We should follow what the evidence dictates is the best way to organize.
Yeah, so do you agree with me that the government does try to use, they try to use propaganda, persuasion, things like that? Is that acceptable in this worldview? Or is that fascism as well?
Yeah, I don't know what you're using as your definition of those things. I actually disagree with the government engaging in open propaganda, and it's technically illegal. But the government does have to correctly inform us about evidence-based facts, so and about the laws and things like that. So the government does have to do things like that, but that's all evidence-based and is necessary for maintaining our freedoms.
Gotcha. Okay, so back to this. Now I think I got some clarity on some things. So use of force rather than persuasion and democracy. Don't you think that the American government utilizes force all the time? Constantly, in fact.
Illegally, yeah. The government violates this.
Well,
principle.
legally. It legally does, right?
It legally uses, well, when it's doing it legally, it's doing it in aid of supporting these freedoms, right? So like, as I discussed in the thing, freedoms can't go forever. When freedoms start to conflict, you have to resolve the conflict. And if that resorts to the point where you have to use violence to stop that conflict, normally, like, we have a lot of other ways to resolve that conflict. So violence is the last resort, generally.
Yeah, but the problem is you say use of force rather than persuasion and democracy. Like, I don't know, there's a protest going on, the government comes in, they shut it down, they're using the force of the state.
I agree. That's
is that fascism?
So it depends on particular cases, but sometimes it's not fascism because the government itself isn't fully fascist yet, but it is illegal and it is contrary to the principles that I'm arguing. So it is trending towards fascism if we allow that to continue. But sometimes it is actually justified. So it depends on the cases as to what you're talking about.
Okay, so any government which uses force rather than persuasion and democracy, when you say fully fascist, what does that mean? Like, they just always use force rather than persuasion and democracy?
When it's actually codified as the law.
Okay.
Right? So, like, if the government's breaking the law, it's heading towards fascism. Okay. When it makes the violent things that it does that are inappropriate, when it makes those things legal, then it's a fascist state.
Okay.
So we're not there yet, but there's a risk of it.
I feel like I got you.
And that is exactly what the Founding Fathers wanted to prevent. They wanted to prevent exactly that outcome. And the organization of the Constitution was built to prevent that from happening. And so the fact that when presidents start ignoring the Constitution, that's extremely dangerous because it's starting to head towards that failure mode I talked about. And we don't want that.
Yeah, but you don't really believe in the Constitution, right? You only believe in the Constitution that you like? Because the original Constitution doesn't look much like the one we currently have, right?
Well, remember in my opening I said one of the things that the first principle that we actually have to admit once we adopt secular humanism, evidence-based reasoning, humans first, is that we have to admit that sometimes we get things wrong. And so we actually do have to learn and improve and get rid of bad ideas and replace them with good ones. So, and the Constitution actually has that built into it. It actually admits that some of it in there could be wrong and might need amendments. And so it kept having amendments, and here we are.
Yeah, so but this is really interesting, right? Because you are putting bumpers on democracy. What you're doing is you're setting a set. So the set is, well, we can have democracy, but only within the limits of things I think are good.
Yeah,
isn't that actually the case?
So I think you might be mistaking me for saying that I believe that, like, democracy is somehow ideologically...
No. I just want to make sure I got it right? Yeah, so I'm not going to straw me in the position, but what you're doing is you're saying...
You need a rights-based democracy. You can't just have a democracy. Yeah. Because we know empirically, when you don't have the rights-based part of it, bad outcomes occur. So you need that, just like we need a combination, and I know a lot of people probably don't agree with me on this. I don't think a purely capitalist society is anything but going to end up in a failure mode. I don't think a purely Marxist society is going to end up in anything but a failure mode.
Okay.
And so we need a hybrid economy. We need socialism and capitalism working as checks and balances against each other to prevent their excesses.
Yeah, but I get it. But what you're still advocating
I'm using that
here...
as an analogy to democracy. So democracy and protection of constitutional basis of rights, they're checks and balances against each other.
But what you're still doing is giving us sets. You're giving us sets of things that
empirically better outcome is to have that.
Yeah, but you're just giving us sets in democracy of you're allowed to do these democratic things within sets that you think are good. That is what you're saying.
What were you saying, sects or sets?
Sets. Like a set. So if it's the case, for instance, that we have democracy, but we don't have what you perceive as rights we need, that's not a democracy that you would want.
A democracy that doesn't respect rights?
Yeah.
Correct.
And you would want
safeguards
against that.
Yeah, you have to have that control. That's why you need a rights-based democracy, not just a democracy.
Okay, so you're going to oppress choice for people on purpose in order to create these bumpers, right?
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. And that's all Christian nationalists are doing too. They're creating. Hang on. Let me make the argument. It is what they're doing. They're creating bumpers. For instance, let's just start with this.
They're not just creating bumpers.
Well,
they're creating non-evidence-based bumpers that actually.
Well, they're not non-evidence-based. Like, for instance, can you tell me in your secular humanist society, is prostitution legal?
I believe it should be.
Yeah, of course.
It
And
should
do you
be,
believe
it should
that?
be legal and regulated the same way
Yeah.
the food industry
Sure.
is.
And do you
I have a
think-
whole article on this. You can
And-
check it out on my blog.
Okay, and what age should women be allowed to be prostitutes?
Well, adults, obviously.
What age is that?
18.
Okay, so you think that 18 years old, women should be able to be prostitutes, right?
Sure.
Inside your secular humanist
Yeah.
society.
Mhm.
How is that going to create better outcomes for the world?
So we actually have comparisons of states that have legal prostitution and states that have illegal prostitution.
Huh?
A good example is Nevada. Nevada actually has some of the lowest STD rates in the country. And one of the reasons is because prostitution there is regulated to engage in safe sex. So because prostitutes are often the vectors for STDs and the prostitutes there are cleaner, because it's a legal regulated thing, we have a better outcome. And in fact, it's just as good as the food industry or anything else.
Would you just regulate all vice?
Yeah, you got to regulate things within the same principles of what actually works to protect people from harm.
I see. And these are sets of harms which you think people ought to
Yeah,
follow.
as
So-
long as they don't create more harm. Like
Mhm.
regulating creates more harm than the
But
harm
isn't
supposed
this
to regulate,
very-
then obviously it's not evidence.
Yeah, but isn't this very idea of harm that you have just arbitrary based on your own preferences?
No, I actually made a good case for it based on we have all of these elements of the evidence we have from history of what systems work better. We have the evidence of what people actually like and don't like. When people don't want to be poor, don't want to be oppressed.
Yeah,
don't
but that's
wanna
based on your preference still. The
It's
idea
everybody.
is like this is
Yeah.
a preferable state of affairs for you.
be for all human beings. All
No.
rational human beings will agree with these things.
Mhm. What
all
about
rational informed human beings.
Yeah, so like take Nevada for instance. It is true the STD rates are lower, but human trafficking is higher. How is that better? And by the way, if you take a look at many of these countries where you see human trafficking going on, guess what? It's directly correlated to prostitution, which is legal and illegal, including OnlyFans.
Yeah, I don't know about your statistics on that. Let's just assume that that's true.
Uh-huh.
That isn't caused by legal prostitution, because that's the opposite of that, right?
It is actually.
So
The-
if you think it's caused by legal prostitution, then
Uh-huh.
what you're arguing for is
Yeah.
that the government should be more regulating of the industry, which is perfectly sensible.
well, yeah, and they can regulate it by making it illegal.
Yeah, but that's
a great regulation. Like, oh, hey,
But
you know what's really great
and
about
that
this?
has
We
the
can just make it
effects-
illegal.
It has all the negative effects of hurting a bunch of people. It makes
Who-
it's a worse outcome.
Who is it going to hurt? How is it going to really hurt 18-year-old? How is this a better world that you are postulating that 18-year-olds can prostitute themselves on the internet
Well,
because you think
about-
that what they're going to do it? They're going to do it anyway.
No, they can do what they want. It's the thing. It's freedom. It's not the government's business to tell them what to do. with
I think.
their
Well,
own
see,
lives.
but here's where we deviate, right? Why is it not, especially according to you, when I look at what your definition is, it's like it does seem like it is the government's business to regulate these things. It's absolutely their business.
Only to the pursuit of harm. So
The pursuit of harm.
Let's-
18-year-olds
let's-
having
let's
sex
go
on the
back.
internet is very harmful.
Let me
then.
answer your question earlier,
Okay.
where you asked about like what would be the benefit. There are actually several, but I'll just go into the one example that we're bringing so far.
Uh-huh.
Legalizing prostitution reduces STD rates, and it reduces STD rates not just in people who are frequenting prostitutes. It spreads throughout the society, so that even innocent people, as by your definition, who aren't engaging in prostitution, are actually being protected from STDs.
Yeah, and do we have some
So-
of the highest STD rates in the world right now with all of your free love, free sex? Don't
Yeah,
stay out of my bedroom.
Do you know what correlates with STD rates around the world and in this country? Christianity.
Oh, I see. Wait a second.
The more Christian
Wait,
states have
so you-
more STDs, the more Christian countries have more STDs.
So do you think that when this place was a lot more Christian, there were a lot more STDs?
Well, if we don't have data on that, I don't know. But
Well, the
I'm
answer is
talking
no.
about-
Hang on.
I'm talking about the data right now.
Yeah, I'm talking about the data right now,
actual
too.
rates, so we can show that there's a correlation between how Christian a country is and how many STDs there are. And therefore, the more secular the country, the fewer STDs there are.
No, actually, when we parse this is crazy. Actually, I would never expect you to make this argument. If you're talking about the more Christian in areas, the more STD it is. If we chalk this up between minority and non-minority, that's the case. And so this is what's really interesting
Well,
about this.
no,
I bet
'cause
most of the countries
it's cross-country.
Yeah, but
to other countries. It's the same
yeah.
in Sweden. When you compare Sweden to the U.S.,
I bet most of the
when you compare
countries
Japan to the U.S.
Are most of the countries that you're going to be making a comparison to, where the STD rates really start to climb up, going to be third world nations who are Christian?
Well, third world nations aren't necessarily free democracies. That varies. So that's
Yeah.
that's not really a relevant comparison
Okay.
here. So, but no, yeah. These are the studies. The studies show that
Uh-huh.
when you have a more Christian society, whether it's state or country, whether it's Finland, for example,
Do you think we had a
you
more-
can't you can't blame STDs on minorities.
Well, I gotta-
because the statistics don't support that.
This is wild to me. Do you think that we were more or less of a Christian country in 1945?
I think we're less of a Christian country now.
I agree. So if that's the case,
if we're talking
shouldn't
about
we see way more STDs in 1945 than we do right now?
I don't know because I don't know the data on that.
Oh, well, there was...
But what would matter?
Wait, hang on. If I could demonstrate for you, if we just look at the historic STD rates, and we're seeing the STD rates grow, and this is attributed to things like sex work and promiscuity, especially sexual revolution since the 70s. Imagine this, Richard. I can just logically demonstrate this for you. Are people having more or less sex now that they have condoms, birth control, vasectomies, would you say?
Oh, yeah, definitely, probably. having
And
more
what
sex,
would you
I assume.
correlate higher than sex for STDs? Anything?
Well, you can look at this where you see the military. You look at the military in World War II, the STD rates in our soldiers compared to the military now, it's down a lot. So
Because they regulate sex. They regulate...
No.
Yeah, well, yes, they
soldiers
do.
can have as much sex, even more sex now.
Wait
than
a
they did back
second.
then. So
Let's back up. Let's make sure we got this right, okay? So if it is the case that we go back to 1945, you say it's a more Christian country then, right? There's less STDs. You agree with me that it is the case that the correlation of STD, the highest one's going to be sexual
Yeah.
intercourse. And people are having more sexual intercourse, especially since the sexual revolution.
You got to be careful here because to do a correct comparison, you actually need to compare like with like. So there are conditions that change.
We
between-
are Christian, less Christian. Like
yeah,
with
yeah.
like.
No, but I'm just saying that there are other conditions, economic, population size, all these other conditions that can affect the relationship.
What could
So,
possibly be
if
more
we
of a
wanna
correlate than penis and vagina? What?
Lots of things.
Well,
Access
for an
to sex,
STD?
access to prostitutes, access to sex, access to other partners, and so on. All sorts
hang
of
on.
things.
If we completely...
There are lots of things that can change this. So if you
Isn't
wanna-
it, hang on, Richard,
if you
isn't
wanna
it the
know
case if we eliminated
if you wanna know
sexual intercourse, there would not be STDs no more?
I'm sorry, say that again.
If we eliminated sexual intercourse, nobody's having sex, there are no more STDs, right?
Sure.
Okay, great.
The problem is that then that creates a greater harm if you're preventing everyone from
Yeah,
having
no,
sex.
I understand.
So
That's not my...
evidence-based evidence-based, human-centered reason would
but
deny
that's-
that.
that's
It's
not
an
my point.
irrational move.
Yeah, that's not my point. My point is that this idea that you have that STDs, right, don't increase even though the population is having
Yeah.
a lot more sex because you're telling the population that it's fine to have a lot more sex because this
Yeah,
God
you're
creature.
wrong. You're scientifically wrong. And I can.
How am I
so there-
scientifically
there-
wrong?
There's. I'll give you an example. There's
Okay.
studies. There's studies of polyamorous couples. The rate of STDs among monogamous couples is actually higher than the rate of STDs among polyamorous couples. Polyamorous couples are having way more sex than the monogamous people. Why is their STD rate down? Because they engage in safe sex. So that's the thing. You can't have that kind of correlation. If you're acting like a secular humanist, you're going to act in a rational way, and therefore you're going to evidence-based way. You're going to engage in safe sex, and therefore that's what we should promote. We should be teaching safe sex skills and so forth. So that, and that actually also has been shown when you actually teach people safe sex, they actually have less STDs.
Hang on, what
and less teen
demographic?
pregnancy.
What demographic do you think is the most polyamorous? Would you say homosexuals?
I don't know.
Homosexuals, Richard?
So the relevant metric would be
Richard,
numbers.
is it homosexuals?
So no, you're asking about rate. There's no raw numbers.
I'm
There
just
are
asking
more-
you, are there more polyamorous people
Yes.
who are yes, thank you.
No.
And what are the STD
No,
rates
no,
of those polyamorous people?
No. You're wrong. There are more heterosexual polyamorous people.
I'm talking about per capita, clearly.
Yeah, by raw numbers. Per capita doesn't make your argument. By
Yes,
raw
it actually
numbers.
does. What I'm saying is that if you have if it's polyamorous people, you're saying have less STDs. If it is the case that when we look at homosexuals who are the most polyamorous,
Yeah.
they have the most STDs. What are you talking about?
But you aren't counting the polyamorous, like the actual polyamorous homosexuals, rather than just.
We can literally do it right now. Do you want me to go through and show you?
Actual
Yes, yeah, of course.
Homosexuals
This
practicing
is
safe
not.
sex. You have a stat showing homosexuals practicing
Well,
safe
no.
sex
See, the thing is
compared
they
to
have the
not
most
having safe
amount of sex. That's why they have the most amount of STDs.
The example I gave shows that you can have way more sex and get less STDs. And so if that works in one population,
Actually, you haven't demonstrated that. You just said it.
No,
But the thing.
there's a study.
Oh, there's a study. Where? From who? Let me look at it because that is.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
anybody can Google it. You still look at Google and try to find STD rates compared to polyamorous monogamous people. So just as I said in my opening, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. You don't have to believe what he's saying. You can go find this stuff yourself. And so all we're doing is informing you of that. And so you know what to go look for. And this is the thing. So it proves that safe sex reduces STDs even with increased sexual activity.
But it, I
So
mean,
the
but it
lesson
doesn't
there
because if
is
we look at
the
the.
lesson there is to promote safe sex, right?
Yeah.
It's not to suppress, like, send cops in to beat the shit out of you. Like, we don't need Stonewall to get STDs down. We just
Okay.
need to have people who actually act responsibly, and we teach them how to do that, give them the skills and the means and access to that stuff.
Well,
It
let's-
also lowers teen
yeah.
pregnancy. It lowers all the metrics that you're thinking of.
Yeah, let's just make sure that we get this right. I want to get into the argument now so we don't get too derailed. When we start with how do you think it is possible, okay, that if it is the case that there is an invisible being that will punish people for wrongdoing, that they will be more likely to avoid the bad behaviors and promote others to avoid bad behaviors?
We know for a fact that that's not the case. So the statistics show the more Christians are actually, Christians are 3 times more likely to be teen mothers, or single mothers, than atheists. So,
But isn't that because
obviously
atheists are more likely to
obviously
report their kids?
Christian help is not.
Isn't that why?
No.
No?
There's no evidence of that.
There isn't?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So, and this is the other thing, is like all the other markers follow country by country, state by state. The more Christian, the more we have STDs and so obviously Christianity is not curing the problem. Whereas you look at the more secular states, it's actually being the secular states that is curing the problem. That's why Sweden is so much better off than us on these metrics. It's not because of promotion of Christianity, it's by promotion of secular humanist ideals.
Well, Richard, since atheists, like 91% of them are pro-choice, right? Why do you think that they would be less likely to get abortion than people who aren't pro-choice?
So a lot of people say they're pro-choice and then go have an abortion. So you have to actually count who's really doing it, not what they say.
Yeah, I know, but we're just going down to likelihoods here. So do you think that it's more likely that a person who believes and
You
is
have to
pro-choice?
go measure it,
I'm
right?
asking you about likelihoods, Richard. Do you think
I
that
can't
it's
tell you likelihood without doubt.
How could-
You gotta have evidence.
logical?
You need evidence.
Logically, do you think it's logically
You need
likely?
evidence. If you're not reasoning from evidence, we're wasting time. So
Okay,
you
well then
need
how can you
evidence.
make, if that's the case, then how can you make the claim that one or the other is less or more likely? Can't?
When I have evidence. then
That's
I
it?
can- Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's
Okay.
not beside
So
evidence.
I just want to make sure it's
You
just
need
that's it.
evidence-based reasoning. If you don't have
Uh-huh.
the evidence, you can't make the claim. So
Okay.
you need your position to be based on the evidence of what actually happens. And so you actually have to go study. You have to actually go count. You can't just sit from the armchair and come up with these ideas. That doesn't work as a method. And that's one of the reasons why the Christian worldview is not best for society. We need a rational worldview that's evidence-based.
Got it.
It actually respects evidence as the fundamental authority, the highest authority.
So studies
that will make society better
Okay.
by all metrics. including-
Studies showing that all areas with legal sex work increase human trafficking inflows. Countries with legalized prostitution reported 20 to 30% higher trafficking inflows than those where it's criminalized, according to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. STD rates are lower in most Christian majority countries. Isn't that interesting? Driven by wealth and systems rather than faith. I'll give you that point, but it doesn't take away from mine.
Yeah.
If anything, highly religious,
have
hang on,
control.
highly religious
Have
Christians,
control.
hang on, I'm trying. If anything, highly religious Christian subgroups show the protective effects. STDs are not more prevalent in Christian countries. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. Christian majority nations, particularly those in Europe and the Americas, generally have lower STD rates than non-Christian majority countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia. Yeah, well, this isn't being a direct comparison to secular nations, but most of these, there's not any nations which are purely secular.
Secular humanist nations have to be free democratic nations, otherwise they're not secular and they're not humanist.
Okay, yeah, but so the Christian nations? The Christian Western nations?
Well, so first of all, you can't include states that aren't free democracies because there have completely different metrics for what's going on. And then secondly, you can't include highly impoverished countries because obviously they have completely different metrics going on there. So what you have to compare is like with like. So you have to look at free developed nations.
So I just want to make sure, I think we're coming to the point of the debate where we can start to have a real good argument here. I heard you say that you think that you can get aughts from ISIS. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me how?
Yes. So if a surgeon wants to save the life of a patient, he ought to sterilize his instruments. And this can be scientifically proven as true. You can prove scientifically that the desire exists, and you can prove scientifically that the prescribed action will actually satisfy the desire. And in fact, that's called a hypothetical imperative. Philippa Foot has argued for, like, first of all, even Immanuel Kant agreed hypothetical imperatives can be proven scientifically. They're empirical facts.
So you think
and Philippa Foot argues that all morality is just hypothetical imperatives.
So you think Hume is wrong?
Well, Hume didn't say the thing that I think you he said. So do you want me to go over that?
Yeah, Hume is saying mere isn't.
Say again?
Mere is. A mere is.
I'm not understanding.
Well, so what you're doing is you're taking things that are hypothetically loaded with oughts already. And that's the problem. Hang on. Yeah, hang on. Let me make the case. You are. Yeah, what Hume is talking about, a mere is. So, like, the door is cold. How do I get an ought from that?
Yeah, so Hume said that he didn't say that you can't derive an ought from is. What he said was that religious people, Christians, were not doing that. They were just ordering things. They were not demonstrating that the ought comes from the is. And that's what Kant actually did, is to show the hypothetical imperative you can do that, and you are doing that. So the ought comes from the is. The is what is your...
Can you, again, let me ask you a question. The door is cold. How do I get an ought from that?
Well, that particularly, you're missing half the question. So, like, you would have to know what is the desire, and then you have to rationally order.
No, it's because that's a mere is. It's a mere is.
Yeah, but you can't derive an imperative without referring to a
That's
goal.
because it's a mere is.
No, that's
no, it's because it's a mere is.
Yes,
hang on, you got this wrong.
Look, imperative propositions are built out of two facts, two actual objective facts: a goal and a means to the goal. So just describing a doorknob doesn't describe any goals. So you can't get an imperative.
Because it's a mere is.
And it's therefore irrelevant.
No, it's therefore the most relevant.
No,
if you have a mere is statement,
you can't get imperatives without goals.
Yes, that's what Hume is saying. Hume is applying this to a mere is. Why are you saying exactly? You just disagreed with me 5 seconds ago.
No, he agrees with me on this.
He didn't agree with you on this. He's talking about a mere is.
The goal. This makes no sense. No, Hume was saying that once you have, and that's why he actually developed his moral system based on human sentiment. So it's based on what you want, and therefore in the rational ordering of desires. And you have to have the goal.
What is Hume's guillotine?
Goal plus the facts equals imperatives, and that's how you get hypothetical.
What is Hume's guillotine?
Say again.
What is Hume's guillotine?
What is Hume's?
Hume's guillotine.
Guillotine.
Yes.
Are you talking about this, the thing we're talking about right now?
I'm asking you what Hume's guillotine is.
What you described it.
You can just say you don't know.
Sure. Go ahead.
Oh, so you don't know.
Yeah,
okay, that's
I don't
okay.
remember. I've heard of it. But I can't remember.
For as this ought or ought not expresses some new relation or affirmation,
right.
it is necessary that it should be observed and explained, and at the same time that a reason should be given for what seems altogether inconceivable. How this new relation can be a deduction from others which are entirely different from it. He's referencing a mere is.
Yeah, and then he goes on to explain that the mere is, once you get a goal as it is, then you actually get the result.
Well, that's because the goal is the ought. You're conflating. So this is the problem that you're conflating here.
Values versus ought.
Well,
ought derived from values are not identical, right? Like you have a value.
So
what you ought to do can depend on the value.
So how are we getting the ought and the is here?
So oughts come out of the combination of two things: the goal, called value, and the means. Right. So like whatever the facts are in terms of what best achieves that goal is then the two oughts. So you have to have the goal. And so the question is, how do you get moral goals?
But that's already loaded with ought.
No.
Yes.
You're starting with values.
What do you think ought?
Values don't have ought.
Richard, what do you think ought means here?
Just a value by itself is like a doorknob. It doesn't entail anything. The value by itself, in conjunction with the facts of the world, then derives the ought. So they're not identical. The ought is a derivation of two facts.
Yeah, but the is not giving you that ought. Some other category is.
The goal is a fact. It's an is, and the means is an actual fact as well. So you have two facts.
Wait.
You have both facts. This is like
Oh, wait, hang on. No. You gotta help me out with this one. I guess I'm a little slow. How could it be the case that if you have a goal, right? I have a goal, right?
Yeah.
Ought you do that goal?
Say again?
Ought you do that goal?
Okay, now that's you can't answer that question just by itself. Just with the value, you can't answer that question. You need the facts. So that gets to rational ordering of values. This is another thing I want to talk about. Is that
So then the is statement here, right, is again moving back to a mere is.
Like which value should you have?
Yeah.
Right. But if we set that aside for a moment, as soon as you have a value, then there are true ought statements that derive from that value. Now the question is, what is the rational order?
No, there's not true ought statements that derive from.
So like as soon as the doctor wants to save the patient, he ought to sterilize his instruments. The ought immediately follows from the context.
Yeah, but do you see you already entailed the ought in the is?
No.
The doctor wants to do X.
I think you're doing semantic thing.
It is semantics are important when we're about to talk about what we ought to do with society.
The ought is a combination of two facts, and you keep confusing the ought with one of those facts.
No, I'm saying that what you are doing here is you're preloading, right? You're taking a statement.
It
Yes,
derives
you
from
are.
two facts, neither of which is an ought.
No.
Now,
Well,
if you want to get to
it's a mere is. You're actually. I can actually demonstrate this for you.
What I think. Let me see if I get this right as to what you're trying to do. Is you don't object to the fact that oughts can derive from an is once you accept the goal. What you're asking is, how do we decide which goals we ought to have?
No, let's back up.
Okay,
So let's start with this.
Which is the two things?
Yeah, how do you get when you say, right, a doctor, he's going to save a patient, right? He wants to save a patient, right? Well, that's already the ought, right?
No, it's not.
Yes. Why does he want to save him then?
So no.
Why he thinks it's an ought, right?
An ought actually has to have two pieces. So this is a semantic fact about what the imperative language requires. It requires a value, a goal, and the facts, and you derive them. So the ought is sterilized instruments. The ought is not want to save a patient. It could be. But once you accept, you just, for whatever reason, we haven't justified why the doctor wants to do this or that he should do this or that. Once he has the desire to do this, an ought is automatic.
Do you see, like, if you said, I don't know, all Christians, right, they should go to church. Or you just say, like, I'm a Christian, and so the ought there is you must go to church. That's even better. The ought there is you must go to church because that's entailed with Christianity. You can't be a Christian if you're not going to church. Can't save the patient unless you're using the instrument. Hang on.
I don't think that's true.
You can't save
Lots of Christians don't believe you have to go to church.
Yeah, but let's just say that was the agreement of what the definition of a Christian is. Okay, is that you have to go to church or you can't be a real Christian, right? You're saying
everybody agrees
so you ought to go to church based on that is, right?
Yeah, but but notice.
But no.
The ought is not identical to the is. The ought is derived.
No,
from two
you're
different
loading
isms.
this to something
So
past
you're
mere is.
conflating the,
No.
the value with the ought. So the ought is
Okay.
sterilizing instruments. The value is
No,
wanting
that's
to
a, you're
wanting to save
mistaking.
the
You're
patient
mistaking
not
here with a mere
sterilizing
is.
Sterilizing instruments is the ought, not the wanting to save the patient.
No, there's no ought entailed there unless it's a mere is. Otherwise, you already are giving the ought.
The ought, sterilized instruments is logically necessarily entailed by the value, the desire. The desire is to save
Because there's already an ought.
No.
Yes, yes.
So
Although it's a mere is statement is what we're looking at. I mean, I can demonstrate this for you a million
That's why I was
times.
trying to ask if you wanted to get at two different questions. It sounds like you're confusing.
I'm not confusing it.
Yeah, you're definitely.
I'm definitely not.
You're switching between two arguments.
No, I'm switching. I'm only
It
using
sounds
one.
like you want to have the ought for the, like, why ought the doctor want to save the patient? That's a different imperative. That's a different ought statement from what the doctor should do once he does it.
Because you're already loading the ought in.
No, there's no ought
Yes.
in there. It's just the desire.
It's a mere. Look,
All it is a
what
desire,
Hume's,
not an ought. A
what
desire.
Hume's deity is talking about is mere is statement. The door is
Yeah, I
cold.
think-
The door is cold. You can't get an ought from that, right?
I think you're obfuscating.
I don't think I'm
So
obfuscating.
would you give me a moment to explain?
Yeah.
So I can actually, it's your audience.
Okay.
Just a bit, because we've gone on with this topic for a decent amount of time. I do want to make sure there are other topics to explore if you guys are up for it.
What's our time left on the conversation?
37 minutes in total.
Okay, so when you construct an ought, the ought is the thing you ought to do. So the sterilizing instruments, that's the ought. You ought to sterilize your instruments. The value by itself might not be an ought at all. It might not even be true that the doctor ought to sterilize the patient, or that he ought to want to save the patient. Maybe he ought not to want to save the patient, but he wants to save the patient. Just the possession of the desire, even if it's not like justified, just the possession of the desire entails an ought. The ought is the sterilizing instrument, so it's different from the value. So you can't conflate those two things. Now, if you want to ask a different question as to why ought the doctor want to save the patient, now we're moving to a different ought. We're moving one step back, and then we get to the whole point of Hume about ordering, rational ordering of values. And I talk about this again for people who want to go further into this, if you're not following or it's confusing or whatever. If you want to know more about this, and the full demonstration is in the article in Religions that I cited in the thing. And you can find it's moral facts exist in all possible universes. You can Google it and find it. It's free. It's not paywall, and so you can read that and you can see how actually.
Look, you can't eat all the time with within this within this diatribe. So the reason here's what's going on. We're trying to untangle a concept. We're both making an ought claim. I'm making the ought claim that I think Christianity is better for society. He's saying secular humanism is. And so what we're doing is we're untangling the philosophy behind that. Is whether or not an ought here is or not. He doesn't believe that it is. And so that's the point. This is why semantics and untangling these things is so
oughts
important.
derive from is all the time, including the ought that we're discussing.
Mere
We
is.
can explain the desires and why people ought to have those desires.
But it's for a mere is. But here's the thing. Diving into this, I guess we're kind of getting back to the idea of Christian nationalism. If it's the case that in this democracy we go ahead and vote in Christian nationalism, what's the problem with that?
So once you allow that to happen, this is exactly the thing that the founders wanted to prevent. They have all of that stuff in there to prevent exactly what you're describing. That's why they have no religious test. That's why they have the First Amendment. There's various other things that are actually designed to prevent ideological capture of the government. The government has to serve evidence and reason and just maintain a civil society and not dictate what moral values people should live by.
That's not answering my question, though. I'm asking you if under this democracy we
Yeah,
vote
I'm
in
getting
Christian
it.
nationalism, what's the problem with it?
Yeah, fair point. I'm getting to that. So what would be bad? Or all the things that I described before. We're going to have...
Now, what would be bad, ultimately, under democracy, the system itself is set so that we can do this, right? If people think it's in their own best interest to vote based on their Christianity, you shouldn't have a problem with that, right?
As long as we follow the law. Yeah, the way the Constitution is written should prevent this. If we ignore the Constitution, burn it down, then yeah, you can have an ideological capture of the government.
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to have it.
Wait.
Once you allow someone to capture the government, then you immediately allow someone else to capture the government.
How would this be capturing the government? You want people to vote based on their value structures, right?
Well, as long as they're voting in the same interests of the goal of the
That
government.
you want, right?
That they would want, even a rational...
Well,
person
hang on.
would
If
want this.
entailed here is that they don't want that.
Let me finish that my explanation for that. So,
Uh-huh.
if you allow a government to just, like people to just vote for what ideology the government can put, then it's a matter of time only that someone gets in and pushes the ideology you don't like and forces you to do things, like prevents us from having this meeting, for example, and shuts this down, like maybe what happened in China, for instance. As soon as you allow that to happen, you will lose control of the government and bad things will happen as a result. That's how we get fascism and all that stuff.
Yeah, but do you see how you're not answering to
But
this?
the goal then is therefore to prevent that.
Here's
So
what
you
I'm
have
asking
to, You have
again.
to structure the government so that you have the government's neutrality. It treats everyone the same.
Yeah.
And you build it so that it can.
Richard, can you answer to the question? If it's the case in democracy, people vote in Christian nationalism, how can you make the claim they don't want it? And if it's the case that we're after human flourishing, hang on, if it's the case that we're after human flourishing, isn't that, I mean, what you're basing this on is like, we should stop them from doing that, right?
Well, so as long as they're following the Constitution that was built to prevent that, right, then that's not going to happen, right?
Well, you can
Because
vote in people to get rid of parts of the Constitution you don't like.
But changing the Constitution requires more than majority vote. So, yeah, what would happen?
Wait,
Here's what would happen.
Back up.
If we got,
People can vote in politicians, right, who can then do things which would change the Constitution, or there could be a constitutional convention.
You know how the Constitution, it's
Yeah,
a lot
there could
harder
be
to
a
get constitutional amendment changes. So let's assume you've got a society
Well,
that's
and
so...
it depends on the Supreme Court rules,
Let's
too.
assume you've got such a, let's say it's 75% of the country now is Christian nationalists,
Yep.
and they actually get the legislatures they want. They actually, in all the states and everything, they get the Constitution changed. What my proposition would say is that's when things are going to go south. That is actually going to go against human interests because of all the past examples of this happened before.
Yeah, so you want to stop them from doing that, right?
I would want to stop them from doing
Would
that.
you use force and persuasion to do that?
Only if they are breaking the law. If they were
Okay, but they
using-
change the law to their preference.
Yeah, I think in that case, if that happened, if the country actually voted to destroy itself, I would have to leave.
Okay, so I just want to make sure though. would you use force rather than persuasion in that case to stop that from happening?
Only if they use force against me. If they're using force, then I'll use force. But if we had the whole country literally just decided this, to basically just
Well, it's not the whole country.
destroy the country.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
I would actually have to leave. And if they tried chasing me and finding me,
Well, they're not trying to chase you and find you.
Yeah.
The spirit of the question is asking you. I'm asking you a simple question.
Force is met with force.
Yeah, I'm not asking you about force being met with force. I'm asking you if force should be used to prevent this if necessary. So, like, let's say, for instance, I don't know, 60% of the nation wanted it, and the rest of them didn't. Should they, at that point, be using force rather than persuasion?
So, if they did it, like they actually did it, then I would just have to leave. Because if they're not
You're not
using
answering
force,
the question, dude.
Unless they start using force against me, like if they come for me to like kill all the atheists, well, now I have to fight them.
I'm asking you if it's the case that force should be used by people who are in a minority, if the majority is voting in these policies, yes or no?
That's right. I don't
Should people, if necessary, use force, even if it's the case that these are being voted in legitimately, right? Is there some problem with people using force at that point to stop it?
Well, I think at that point, it is the wrong word here. So like, what then happens? So once they turn around, once they've done it, and they turn around and start using force on us.
Well, what force?
To go kill all the atheists? Or
No, they're not.
whatever.
No. They could just do things like,
But
I
you
don't know,
that.
no
You
more
don't
gay
know.
marriage.
By the time, look at the French Revolution. By the time they get in there, that you won't have control of what they decide at that point.
But
they
you
could
can't
decide to go kill all
But
the
what I'm
atheists.
saying is that is it the case that you would, if you had X amount of like people in a minority, they felt that they were being oppressed. They just weren't being oppressed with violence necessarily, unless it was a case of them breaking laws,
At some
new
point,
laws.
There has to be violence. There has to be violence, right? And so
Well, then that would be the case with anything. If you just violate any law, there's violence.
If you take away all the rights but then never enforce that, then you're basically disrespecting them.
I totally agree.
If you take away all the rights and then enforce that, you're using violence to take away.
Yeah, but I mean, this can be phrased however you want. There's a right for men and women to get married. That's it.
A right?
Yeah, you just say there's a right for women and women to get married. Now we're enforcing that right, right?
Yeah.
And then homosexuals get married. They say, oh, well, you're not allowed to do that. You're violating the law.
Well, so I'm pretty sure. If you want to follow the logic on that, I agree with the conservative Supreme Court decision written by Neil Gorsuch and concurred by Roberts on why actually that it falls out of the Civil Rights Act that it would be against that. So you have to overthrow the Civil Rights Act.
Or just have it reinterpreted or amended.
Yeah,
you could have things amended,
right,
things like
yeah,
this. But what I'm saying is that these are all, if
yeah.
this was done in a lawful way, right, to get these things done.
Which it was, right?
Yeah, but if it's done in a lawful way to get them undone, right,
Yeah.
is that now fascism?
Yeah, no. So
Yes or no?
fascism-
Yeah or no?
So if it's done in that way,
Yeah.
the process is not fascist. The end result might be if they start coming after you with billy clubs to like arrest gay people. For example.
Well, they're not going to arrest them, but what if they just don't let them get married?
What if they just
What if
don't
they...
let them- no,
hang on, Richard, let me ask the question. So let's say, for instance, they go through, they outlaw OnlyFans, prostitution, things like this, make that law. They outlaw homosexual marriage, make that law. Right? They outlaw things like transgender kids getting reassignment surgery, and they make that a law.
Sure.
Right? People violate those laws, they then get arrested, or things like this, like you would for any other law. Is that now, are we in fascist territory?
No, because at that point, the people are actually having a say, and they're just using a lawful, non-violent process to decide what rights they're going to have.
Perfect.
Now, we would engage in persuasion, right? And so I would think that that's going to be bad. It's going to lead to bad outcomes.
Now then tell
When
me
we talk
any
about
of the current...
actual basis
This
of
is perfect.
evidence. This is why secularism
Now we're getting there.
is
So,
about evidence.
so help me out here. What Christian nationalist proposition then fits this form of fascism? Use of force rather than persuasion democracy.
Yeah.
Which one? Which
What-
actual proposition being
So-
proposed by Christian nationalists right now
It sounds like
fits that?
you're defining Christian nationalism as simply the release of gay people in America.
No. I'm asking you a specific question. I'm going to ask it again. What proposition from anybody who's advocating Christian nationalism would not fall under the idea that they're changing the laws to better suit themselves, including amending for several constitutional amendments or things like this? How would that be fascist? By your definition, that's not fascism now. So if that's the case...
It only becomes fascism when violence comes in.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. So Christian nationalism is not, in fact, unless you can give me the propositions of Christian nationalism that are going to lead to this sort of violence rather than just law changing, can you?
So are you claiming that Christian nationalism won't increase?
I didn't claim anything. I asked you a question. Can you steal man what? Or at
Yeah,
least
to understand
repeat
your
back.
question, I got to understand what you're getting at. So I need to
No, you
understand.
don't. You don't need to understand what I'm getting at to understand my question. You
Yeah,
just need to answer the
I don't
question.
know what you're asking for.
Well, let me ask you again.
Yeah.
Christians right now, Christian nationalist thought leaders all over the place, who are saying we want to amend these various laws under the democratic rules, use the Constitution in order to amend many of these laws, right? And then if you
And
violate
you have
those
a
laws,
protected right to do that, to talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
and
so hang
persuade.
on, so hang
You
on.
have the protected right to persuade people.
I understand, but what I'm saying to you is, how could that be fascism if there's no use of force being involved here? If the Christian, can you show me the Christian nationalist proposition that leads to force?
If you're talking about the Christian nationalist government is not going to use force to enforce any laws or do anything.
Your secular government will.
Yes, but those are evidence-based, human-centered things. They're not based on ideology.
That's not what you said. You said fascism is use of force rather than persuasion democracy. It doesn't matter if they're using
Yeah.
evidence or not. Hang on,
Persuasion and democracy, yeah.
they're utilizing persuasion and democracy,
Right.
and they're still utilizing persuasion and democracy.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're not fascist, right?
Well, they're not advocating. I mean, they might be advocating for a fascist government, but they're not fascist yet. 'Cause
No.
they
That's
have
not what I'm
resorted to
asking.
violence,
This
they have
is wild to me. So help me out here again. If it's the case that democratically, for instance, we just say no more trans, right? You're just not allowed to be trans anymore, right? Or I don't know, you're not allowed to get married as a homosexual anymore, and you're not allowed to do prostitution anymore. let's just say that you're like not allowed to gamble or do drugs anymore, ever, right? You're not allowed to do any of those things.
Yep.
That's passed democratically through persuasion.
Yeah.
Now it has the force of law.
That's right.
That's no longer fascism.
That by itself is not fascism.
Then can you give me any Christian propositions?
If you
Christian
can persuade people to vote again to take those things
Perfect.
away, yes.
Then show me the Christian nationalists out there who are giving the proposition which would lead to this fascism you're talking about, because that's all they're talking about doing.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what you have in mind as Christian nationalism, like what the Christian nationalist government.
That's not my question. My question is, can you name a single Christian nationalist right now who is proposing anything other than just amending laws and tailoring them to their own preferences?
Wait, so like, let me see if I understand what you're asking. So you're asking if, so like, for example, the kill the gays people, for instance.
When there's no
There
Christian
were-
nationalist seriously proposing
there
to
were-
kill homosexuals. No.
Yes, absolutely.
Who?
So there was a guy who ran in Texas. Had got like 100,000 votes on the kill the gays biblical policy concept. So
Oh, come on.
that's
This
what
is
we're
not
talking-
serious. There's
And then
no
the
serious
ones who
political
couldn't get
movement for
elected
this.
here went to Uganda and got it done there, and actually got Uganda to actually start trying to kill the gays. And then, of course,
I don't think Uganda needed much help with that, right? But the thing is like pointing this out again when we're talking about the proposition here. I can't actually think of a serious Republican, a serious person in office, or a serious Christian nationalist who has any sort of following which could actually have anything get done like this, who's proposing anything other than amending laws, having them enforced to suit their preferences, just like you. Hang on, just like you are. You can't call that fascism then, by your own definition.
So it depends on like what. That's why I'm just not even clear on what you think the Christian nationalists are going to do when they take over. So
I'm
like,
asking you,
either-
which Christian nationalist has a serious proposition for utilizing force other than democracy and persuasion, which is what you're considering fascism to be? You said all of them are fascist. Right in your opening statement. Can you give me the proposals that they're
kind of
making?
opening statement. Yeah. So the Christian nationalist idea of destroying the Constitution, right? Of actually taking away these checks and balances that actually, for instance, taking away democracy. For instance, taking away the women's right to vote, for instance. So these things.
Wait. If you take away women's rights to vote via persuasion and democracy, that's not fascism.
No, by the time you get to that, right? By the time you're actually taking away a right that is necessary for a well-functioning government, now you're actually involved.
It's
in
not
fascism.
necessary for a well-functioning
'Cause
government.
You're limiting the power. You're actually putting the power in men. So now men control the government. So yeah, that would actually start to be.
Wait, hang on. Well, okay, so I mean, then 18-year-olds control the government, 17-year-olds don't. They're disenfranchised.
So if now you're talking about why do we?
No, I'm pointing out something important here.
Yeah,
This is
you're
still
changing the subject.
no. I'm going to stay on the subject. Use of force
So-
rather than persuasion, democracy. I still haven't heard a single Christian nationalist thought leader that you can name who has any sort of serious following, any sort of political following, has any sort of moxie to
100,000
get
votes
this
sounds like
done.
a big following, but I think like this is a thing that people can test and go see like what actually a Christian
Yeah,
nationalist.
who
are
though?
for.
Can you name a name? Can you give me the name?
No, I don't.
Because
so,
there isn't any, Richard. There's none who aren't using.
Yeah, that's
and by the
checkable.
way, so Richard, here's Richard's entire argument reduced. This is wild. And you can, if I'm straw manning this, I would like you actually to correct
Okay,
it.
yeah.
But isn't it the case that what you're saying here is, as long as Christian nationalists utilize persuasion and democracy to change any amendments we don't like, any laws we don't like, and we utilize only persuasion and democracy to do that, and then enforce those laws tailored to our preferences, that is not indeed fascism at all, is it?
there's two possible outcomes. So one is that it's not. The other is that if they start actually using violence to suppress the vote, for instance, if they actually start contradicting human as necessary rights-based democracy. If they get rid of the democracy and the persuasion part, now they're fascists.
Well, they can limit democracy.
Once you've got billy clubs beating people
Wait
up
a
for
second,
saying things you don't like.
Yeah, I know,
or-
but nobody's proposing that. No Christian nationalist. You can't
okay.
name one. Name one.
So
Can you just name one? Just one.
What will you do if I have YouTubers out there find a bunch of names that fit that? Like, what behavior would you engage in?
I would engage with those same YouTubers, and I would say, look, let's go through it. Are these people actually proposing that we're using force? These serious, like guys who can actually get this done. They're seriously proposing that we're using force in order to do anything other than enforce laws that the majority of people want because they're voting them in.
Getting rid of democracy itself then would not be an example of that. That would actually be instituting a fascist government. So,
Well,
like,
you're not getting rid of democracy by limiting it. All you're doing is putting bumpers on it, like you want.
No. Like if you take away the vote of half the people, you're actually working.
That's not destroying democracy. That's just
Yeah,
that's flat out illogical. Okay, well then why can't 15-year-olds vote?
So that gets to the competence argument, right? So there are people who are adults, let's say 40-year-olds, who can be declared legally under due process of law to be incompetent.
Yeah.
So then they don't get
Okay, so help me out here. Why is it then that if we raise, let's just say hypothetically we raise the voting age to 35, is that fascism?
Yeah, I would say because you're disenfranchising competent people who are actually part of the society and therefore have an equal.
Do you think 17-year-olds are a lot less competent than 18-year-olds?
So that varies case by case.
Yes,
If you wanted to
exactly.
have
It varies case by case.
If we wanted to have a better system, we could have competency tests, and so decide the age rather not by age but by whether you
Yes,
have competency.
you're.
And then some people over 18 would not qualify as competent, and some people under 18 would qualify as competent.
What about
That would be
prisoners?
the most rational system. But
Should
it's-
prisoners be able to vote?
Say again?
Should prisoners be able to vote?
Not when they're in prison because they've actually gone through
So
due
you
process.
want- but wait,
due
so-
process.
so-
they didn't have the right taken away.
So that's not
arbitrarily.
fascism, right?
It was due process.
So
That's
you
right.
can limit prisoners being able to vote.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's not fascism.
Yeah,
but you
that's
can't limit any other voting bloc.
That's a punishment for a
Yeah.
crime. So that's through due
Yeah.
process, not arbitrarily.
Yeah, but it's still democracy. Let's say that you had like the only people who could own property could vote. That would still be a democracy.
Yeah, true.
So the thing is like what you're saying here makes no sense. I just asked you if you limit the electorate, does that get rid of democracy? You say, or is that fascism? You said yes. The thing is though is that it still holds that it's using persuasion and democracy. It's still a democracy.
Yeah, and you're using the word differently than I was. So
No, I don't think I am.
When I'm talking about rights-based democracy, I am actually talking about all competent people should have an equal say in government. So they should be incentivized. If you're disenfranchising people, you're heading towards fascism because now you're imposing force.
That doesn't mean it's
who
fascist.
don't have a participation
Wait,
in government.
you see how what you're doing is equivocating here. You're using the ambiguity of the language in order to switch between two different definitions.
No.
When you said democracy here, does democracy require full participation? No. Does it require in any way, shape, or form everybody can vote? No. Can we have certain people who they have stakeholder democracy, for instance? You can vote if you meet such and such criteria.
Yeah.
You can vote if you can pass a
have all
civics
these-
test.
yeah,
You
that's
can
true.
vote if you do this. You can vote. That still fits the criteria of democracy,
But
doesn't it?
that is not what I meant by democracy. You're defining democracy as broadly as possible, which is fair. That's an actual use of a word. In my actual explanation, in my opening, I made very clear that I'm talking about democracy that enfranchises, and not a democracy that limits to an oligarchy, for example. So you've got to have rights. To have rights-based democracy, and evidence-based rights-based democracy, all competent people should have an equal say. They should not have it lorded over them by everybody else.
Yeah, but
they
you haven't
don't have a say in
demonstrated.
the government.
But you haven't demonstrated how that would be fascist if you limit the electorate to like super competent people or people who are very interested in voting, rather than the most bribable portions of it. Or if you just have stakeholder democracy,
Yeah.
is stakeholder democracy fascist?
So I'm assuming so. Like the thing is that stakeholders are everybody. Everybody's a stakeholder.
Well, no,
So-
not
so
everybody
any-
owns property, for
Any
instance.
narrower stakeholder is you're actually imposing force on people that don't have a say in the government. So that becomes fascist. Yeah.
So it's inherently fascist. Just is fascist.
It becomes fascist.
Yeah, but you see how you're using ambiguity again. You're switching between two different. Yeah, look.
I know.
If you say the use of force rather than persuasion in democracy, that's what fascism is. If people utilize democracy to limit democracy, it's still democracy.
Yeah, a fascist democracy.
Yeah, it's not fascism.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's a fascist democracy.
See, that's the distinction that I was making. If you're having an oligarchy, which is technically a democracy,
Yeah.
that's not the democracy I was talking about. The one that we actually need. And so the instrumentation of that is that once you're actually a society is using force to impose on other people who don't have a say in government, now you've got fascism operating.
So parents are fascist.
Say again?
Are parents fascist?
Well, incompetent people aren't relevant to this point. So you keep trying to say
wait a second. I
incompetent
think
people are not
17.
different
I think
from-
17-year-olds are as competent as 18-year-olds for the most part.
And if you want to persuade to actually expand the franchise to 17-year-olds,
Well, but why don't I limit it to 21? Like
So-
drinking. Like, oh, you're not old enough to have
There's
beer.
no sound basis for that. Actually, the drinking age should be 21.
What should it be?
It should be 18.
What's the sound basis for 18 versus
As soon as
17?
you're a competent person, you should have all your rights.
What is
If
the
you have equal
difference
rights
in
with everybody else? You should have
Then
equal
Richard,
rights.
you're in. I don't understand this either. So then, what?
So
How do we determine other than arbitrarily it should be 18?
Do you even want a society where everyone has equal rights and has an equal vote who's competent? Do you
Well,
want to actually take the rights of
well,
voting?
when you're talking about voting, I would raise the voting age. Yeah.
You would raise the voting age? Yeah, so that would be contrary to evidence. That would be contrary to evidence in terms of who's actually competent.
Oh, really? When does the brain fully develop?
Well, that's not relevant to competence. Competence has to
It's
be...
not relevant to competence.
No, not at all. Because...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no,
Oh.
your brain develops continually throughout life. So
Yeah, but I mean, it develops.
being more
it
developed
develops-
doesn't make you more competent. Competence is actually reading the threshold of rational, the ability to understand rational decisions.
And do we test for that?
medical ethics boards, when they determine competency, they've got a competency test to determine.
Yeah, there's a test. Is there a test for you to be enfranchised?
I would approve of one.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is that then how can you say it's competency? You can't say these people are competent. You don't even test them.
Well,
Nothing. And the thing is back to
we
this.
know- we
It
know-
also doesn't help your
We do,
argument
we do.
at
So
all. How?
If someone's not competent, they can get declared incompetent. You can force the issue and have a competency test done.
Yeah, but that's different than competency in voting. Do you agree with me that there's a bunch of really uninformed voters who go out and vote anyway?
That's not the kind of competency I'm talking about. Competency that when you do a medical ethics test for competency, you're not testing whether they are scientists or have medical knowledge or whatever. You're testing whether they have the ability to understand and make decisions rationally. So that does mean that they can make stupid decisions
Yeah,
and still
so
be competent.
why wouldn't you put that for like voting then? Why is that a problem to do?
Because this is the thing. There's a lot of political science on this. If you actually do that,
Yeah.
then two things happen that lead to bad results. One is people start gaming who gets to pass the test and not, and so you've got an oligarchy. The other thing that happens is that you can't have a society governed if you're excluding people who actually are competent. If you make up an idea of competence that doesn't really relate to the competency that we're trying to talk about.
Yeah, but you also have
It's like, can you make rational
but you have other
decisions?
issues with
if
universal.
you have the ability to make rational decisions about your life, then you actually are competent enough to be...
Yeah, but you have bad issues here too with universal suffrage. You end up with incompetent voters who can be bribed because on the short term they get things that they want.
That's not the competency that we're talking about.
It is the competency that we're talking about.
You're obfuscating by using two different concepts of competence.
I mean, okay, first of all, I didn't even define what I meant by it. I'm trying to use what you mean by it.
No, I'm watching you do
And so
it.
the second portion here that we're looking at is, again, your claim here is that suffrage has to be universal or it's fascism. When your opening statement, when I asked you to define this, and I made sure I got you to do it 3 different times so that I was clear. Use of force rather than persuasion, and democracy. You're now saying that the democracy that you're talking about is requirement of full enfranchisement. Full enfranchisement.
Well, I mean, apart from the exceptions we just talked about, right?
Yeah, right. So the thing is that anything outside of that is fascist? Is a fascist society?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, again, it depends on how it implements that. So fascism comes with implementation. So yeah, I would say that there's definitely degrees of fascism.
But it's not a fascist society.
It might be slightly fascist. It might be heading towards a fascist state. It could be half fascist. Yeah, there's degrees.
It's 10% fascist?
10% what?
But pointing this out, when you say use of force rather than persuasion democracy, and that's what fascist is, You still haven't actually told me how it is any of these Christian nationalists or any Christian nationalist propositions or any person making these propositions is doing anything other than saying that through persuasion and democracy, we can change and tailor society to fit our preferences. And we can use the very constitutional precepts to do that. If it's the case that we did not have the 14th Amendment, hang on, I just want to make sure that I got this right.
Go for it.
Our founding fathers were fascists, right?
Yeah, I just realized something.
Yeah.
We've been talking for almost an hour about the definition of fascism, which is not even what we're supposed to be debating.
Well, hang on, it shows an incoherent or coherent
doesn't even
worldview.
depend on that. We could just erase fascism from an opening statement. It had no effect on anything I argued. What I argued was that a secular human society creates better outcomes for everybody. I presented a bunch of evidence for that. Scientific evidence, comparative evidence, historical evidence. So what we call fascism is irrelevant to what is actually better.
Well,
secular humanism is a better society. It actually works better. We have tons of examples of this. The more secular societies are better in every metric that we can look at.
Yeah, but do you
than
see?
Christian society.
Do you
So
see the
Christianity
smuggle?
is not a good idea to
Yeah,
recommend
but do you see the smuggle here for better?
Say again?
You see the smuggle here is for better. You immediately smuggle in under better.
But I defined operation
I
for
know
better
you
means.
define things that you like. I get it. But the thing is that's the smuggle of better. Hang on.
Well, everybody likes emotional and physical prosperity. Everyone likes that.
Well,
right?
the thing is like under. Well, I don't know.
Peace and
Muslims don't seem to. but the thing is.
And you would argue they're irrational
Yeah.
in that
So
way, right?
okay. But the point is, let's start with this. I just want to make sure that I got this right. Under this definition and everything that you just said, our founding fathers were fascist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our founders were fascist.
Yeah, they were at
Got
least
it.
slightly fascist. They actually.
Well, I mean, they were really fascist because they
legalized-
almost let nobody vote.
They legalized slavery. Yeah.
They let nobody vote, basically.
I mean, yeah, there's a restricted vote.
Now, under our founders' version of what voting was, and I just want to be very, very clear on this, under what their version of voting was, if there was no slavery, none of that, they still would have been fascist, right?
Yeah. Why are we still talking about the definition?
Here's
of
why,
fascism?
because
this is irrelevant.
because I want to make sure that we have coherency when we get to prescriptions. That's why. So I just want this answered, and then I'll tell you what.
No,
If you let me finish this
saved-
off, you can interrogate me.
I could have saved the whole hour here to say, like, I'll agree with any definition of fascism you want, and then now let's talk about what we're supposed to be debating. We haven't even talked once about what we're supposed to be debating. For this whole
We
hour.
have been.
We've been arguing over the definition of fascism, which is a useless point.
No,
It's
we're
not
arguing
even-
over societal
This is
prescriptions from your
irrational.
view and my
This is
view.
irrational.
It's not irrational.
Yes.
So not only that,
Yes, to
let's
get hung up for an hour
well, let's get into
on
it then.
what
Let's
is
get.
called
I'll tell you what. Let's get into
fascism
whatever you
and
want.
not debate what we're supposed to be debating is
I'll tell you what.
irrational. This has been irrational the whole
Get
time.
into whatever you want then. Ask me whatever you want.
Well, actually, I'm content with you to ask me questions.
Great.
But I want you to ask me questions. I want you to ask me questions about what we're actually supposed to
I'm
be debating.
trying. Listen, the reason.
No, you're arguing over semantics. I will even grant, for the purposes of this debate,
Okay.
I will grant your definition of fascism.
Okay, then we'll move right into the next thing. Let's talk about better.
We're talking about better.
We're
yes,
talking about
there we go.
better. So what is better other than your sense of preference and other people's senses of preference? What is it?
What is better is what's better for everyone.
Yeah, hang on. That's a tautology.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So like what is necessary for everyone to achieve the things that everyone wants, right? So every rational person knows that they need peace and justice to achieve all the other things they want to achieve. They know they want, if they can access it, increased emotional and material prosperity. Everybody really wants these things. Even if they don't know it, you can talk to them and get them to rationally understand that those are the things that they want. So that is why it derives from what everybody wants. Everybody wants those things. And everybody needs those things in order to accomplish anything else they want. So that follows necessarily from that status. And so once you get that, now you have a goal, and from that goal and the physical facts of how things work, physical systems work, how social systems work, and so on, then you get the ought, right? So you have the desire, everybody agrees on what the
So
what the
can I
goal
just
is.
ask, does better here then just mean what people want?
It means a specific thing that people want, not just whatever they want.
Okay. Well,
So-
wait, hang on.
So we've
A
empirically
specific.
determined that everyone
Yeah.
wants these things: peace, justice, prosperity. Everyone wants those things. So that's an empirical fact. That's a fact. That's not a supposition or anything like that. Once you accept that fact, there are then certain things about what best achieves that and what doesn't best achieve that. And
Yeah, but
those
do you
things are
see?
then prescribed.
Yeah, but do you see the
Very
next?
detailed
Do you see the next smuggle when you say things like justice? What is justice?
So that's not a smuggle. What people want. That's
Yeah,
I'm
but
talking
when you
about
say
what
people want justice,
So now you
what-
want to waste another hour.
I'm not
arguing over
trying
the
to.
definition of justice?
I'm literally trying. Everybody wants this thing. Okay, what's the thing? Stop wasting my time.
Yeah, I think that's silly because I think people
I don't think it's
understand-
silly. I think that
people understand
would-
justice
Is what?
is the equitable enforcement of the laws.
That's all justice is?
Um,
Because you can have unjust laws, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Now you're changing terms in terms of what kind.
I'm
of
just making sure I got your terms.
What people want is to be treated equitably. So if everyone is being treated equal, then that's justice. And so to actually maintain that, and also to the enforcement of rights, right? So like the right to assemble, the right to free speech, and so on. If people are not allowed to have those things, then you're facing unjust because you're actually distributing rights and properties. Rights differently to different people. So justice is equitable treatment. So people want basically fair. They want things to be fair.
They want them to be fair. So if it's the case,
Well,
that-
and they need them to be, right? So like there's an actual particular fairness here that even if someone isn't aware of what would be fair.
So this
they
is a
still
massive
need,
appeal
They
to
still
con-
need a fairly adjudicated society to achieve all the other things that they want.
so this is a massive appeal to consensus.
It is an appeal to what people absolutely need to achieve all of their desires. That's a fact of the social system.
Yeah. Well,
Any social
hang
system.
on.
That's why I
Wait,
cited
what?
Axelrod. That's why I cited Axelrod's study in corporation because
Yeah.
he proved that there's literally no social system in any possible world that doesn't need this property to be maintained for everybody to achieve all the other goals and not for there to be failure modes where you get excess conflict.
Yeah, but that's
violence.
not necessarily what people want. And so this is the problem, right?
But
When
it-
you say it's specific
put it
things
this
that people
way.
want, hang on, and then you say something like justice. That's a very loaded term, justice. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different
Sure,
people.
that's
To Islam, justice means something way different than it means to
Yeah.
us. To Christians, justice means something very different than it does to secularists.
That's why
now,
I
hang on,
constructed my argument
Richard,
in the
can-
opening.
let me respond real quick.
Okay,
and
but
then I'll let
you're
you.
skipping right past what I
And the
told
thing
you.
is that you just defined it as equitable treatment, and this is desirable by all people, but it's not. Equity itself is not the desire of all people for justice.
Let's go back to what my actual opening statement was, right? So what I
Okay.
actually argued.
Mhm.
So I argued that I said the word need. So I argued that people need this justice to achieve all the other things that they want.
That's
things
worse.
go worse for them if they don't have justice. So people can have a mistaken understanding of what justice is. People can want things that are self-harming. It's going to do bad for them. My discussion was need. So whether you believe it or agree with it or understand it yet, you need certain things to be the case. You need peace. You might think it's great. Why don't we just fight a war everywhere constantly and just be constantly at war? You might want that. You might think that, but you would be wrong in terms of what would help you accomplish the things you want. You need peace, actually, whether you're aware of that or not. So peace is essential.
That's another
you
smuggle.
need peace. It's not a question.
No, that's tautological again.
This is a physical, social system thing. So if you don't have peace,
Richard,
people's ability to achieve
how is it
goals
not a
is impaired.
tautology to say we need it because we need it?
No. So if you want to accomplish your goals, that ability, whatever
You can
goals are,
accomplish your
doesn't matter.
goals without peace?
It's impaired, right? So you
Yeah,
obviously-
but see what I mean?
So-
It's like that's not a need.
No, it's yes, it is.
No, it's
If-
not.
If you want to maximize your ability to do this,
Yes.
right? So you don't want to throw impairments on yourself to make it harder to achieve your goals. Just because you could achieve goals, maybe it's much harder. You absolutely do want to have it not be harder,
Yeah.
right? So everybody, that's a need. People need
Yeah.
it to be easier, right? So people need.
Well, I
to
don't think that
have
you
the things they
demonstrated the need, but I'm just willing to grant it, just to move the conversation forward. Which Christians, the idea that there's a need for peace in order to accomplish goals, which Christian nationalists are proposing war?
want. Proposing war. I think there's a lot of Christian nationalists.
Which ones?
Okay, I can't name anyone.
Yeah,
right
because
now.
there aren't any.
Actually,
There's not a single one.
I'm pretty sure, don't a lot of Christian nationalists support the war in Israel? Or are they against it? What's your take on that?
They're usually pretty anti-Zionist.
Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah, they're usually
But
pretty
they're also pretty anti-Muslim. So
Yeah,
do
well,
they think
I
Israel
think that
should
they
get out of
usually.
Gaza?
Well, the thing is funny is
Are you
like
pro-Palestinian?
the
Is that
Christian.
the
No,
position?
the Christian nationalist position, generally speaking, when it comes to war, especially like war between Palestine and Israel, is frankly not our business, right? So we would be promoting the peace and welfare of our people and our people group, which would be
Yeah.
United States citizens. So the thing is like
until you get into power, and then the same thing happens that happened every other time we get Christian governments in power, is we get an increase in war. And
That's every
So you
day.
might think that that's what's going to happen, but as soon as you give the hands over to
Yeah, democracy
you're
has
gonna
not
see a lot
prevented
more
that.
warmongering.
Democracy has not prevented war.
History has shown that democracy has reduced war.
No, well, I don't
In fact-
know. Has it?
Yes, it has.
Well, let's talk about.
Statistically.
Yeah, let's just talk
I
about the
cited
20th.
studies. Actually, I
yeah,
cited books and summaries in my opening.
let's just
So
hang on, Richard, hang on.
enfranchisement
Let me finish real
of
quick.
women, enfranchisement of women reduced interstate conflict, and you can show where it was, where women's
But
suffrage
no
started.
Christian nationalist is proposing war.
It doesn't matter what they're proposing. What matters
It does
is-
matter what they're proposing.
No, it does. It doesn't, because when we look at historical past, what has happened, they can say whatever the hell they want to say. They're not necessarily telling the truth. They're not necessarily correctly.
You can say that
doing
about any system of governance.
Correct. So the point.
So
is-
what? So who cares?
So we look at the evidence. So the evidence is historically, Christianity running governments does not work out well. You get more war. So regardless of what Christians say or want, Jesus said turn the other cheek, so he's totally anti-war. And yet what happens as soon as Christians get control of government? War is constantly. In fact, when the founding fathers created the document, they were and I mentioned this, they were on the end of hundreds of years of Christian warmongering. So it doesn't matter what Christians say. What matters is what they do.
Yeah.
And history gives us the evidence of what they do.
Well, here's the thing. The idea here is just this. I need a proposition from you, which fits this criteria that Christians aren't actually, if they're in charge, going to give you the same things. Meaning, when you say, hang on. When you say that it's persuasion democracy or it's leading towards fascism, you make these claims that, wait a second, when Christians are in charge, it leads to more war. I'm even willing to
I didn't
grant.
say that. I actually didn't say that. I didn't say when Christians are in charge, it would lead to more war. What I meant is when you
Ooh, well, that sounds like a performative contradiction.
No,
but
because
okay.
if you take the founding fathers, they were mostly Christian.
That's right.
And so, but they understood that the government could not be Christian.
So Christians in charge.
So yeah, but they made the government not operate as a Christian government, right? So it was equal to everybody. It treated everybody the same. It did not impose any Christian things.
So,
right?
Christians are in charge of the government.
Christians
that's
can
fine.
certainly vote for secular humanist governments
So-
and prefer to, even argue that they should.
So if it's the case that Christians are in charge of the entire government because they're voted into office, and it's the case that they begin to amend it, let's just say, for instance,
Yeah.
not only does that not meet any of your criteria for fascism, doesn't meet any of your criteria for, basically for anything bad. Why shouldn't people go and vote Christians into office as much as possible, even if the preference and tailoring of people is going to be to remove these things that you consider enshrined rights?
That was my argument. That in fact, so we can separate Christians into two groups. The ones that agree that we should have a secular humanist government, right?
Yeah.
So they're actually agreeing with me on this.
Sure.
So they're not a threat to this. The Christians who want to dismantle that, they're a threat to this. So if they use legal process to get there, then what ends up, at that point, would be a fascist state. Right? So it's like they're promoting, actually moving towards fascism. Even if they don't think they are or whatever. But again, I think we're arguing over the definition of fascism.
Well, because the problem, I don't think we're really arguing over the
fascism
definition.
doesn't exist. The word doesn't mean anything. Nothing is fascist. Let's just say that.
Yeah, nothing's fascist.
So the issue is
outcomes.
Outcomes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So let's start with births. For outcomes. How are you going to solve the birth rate problem? You're just going to do mass migration, right?
Well, right now, immigration is working fine at that in every country. It is.
So hang on.
If you look at Canada, Sweden, even.
And are we getting all of those people from Christian nations who have an ought to breed?
Say again?
Are we getting those people mostly from Christian nations where they have a higher population of people because they're Christians and they have an ought to breed?
Well, the reality is that once you get into a free democratic society, it's very expensive. So children become expensive. So we see this as the third generation rule. You bring in immigrants, by the third generation, they're having children at the same rate.
Yeah,
as
same
everybody
rate.
else, because it's too expensive.
I agree.
Yeah.
So your whole plan is to use the third world or third world nations or places like this as basically a breeding tube for your society, right?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a callous way to put.
But it's
to
true,
describe
isn't
human
it?
beings.
Like, I mean,
human beings aren't breeding.
Look,
they're actual people.
How are you not doing that though? Isn't the plan for you to use the third world in order to import as many people because they breed and we don't?
That's right. And what part of our plan should be to uplift the third world as well. So that will also bring down that. So
we have a 2-minute warning.
all of this wraps up around 2080. Projections are that the population of the Earth will start to decline by 2080. We're not there yet. So when that does happen, there's two things we could do.
It could happen long before that, by the way.
Not according to the math so far. The stats show it's about like 2070, 2080.
Yeah, the problem is that the UN has been consistently wrong on their estimates.
I'm not sure if that's UN stats, but
I think it is. I think you're
Okay,
referencing
yeah,
United Nations stats or whoever you're.
I don't think it's just stats, right? It's an actual scientific study with math and everything, right? So like if you're going to say that it's wrong, you've got to actually prove that it's wrong. Find like where's their math wrong.
Well, I'm not. Hang on.
So-
I'm not quibbling over whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think that it's even possible that it could happen before then.
Yeah, I
so
mean, logically possible. It's not.
Yeah.
likely, though. It's not likely.
But hang on. Whether it is
The
or
birth
not,
rates are too high right now.
why is it that we should not? How does it not lead to a better society when it's the case that we can have people who have shared value structures, shared value systems, right, and are at least somewhat like-minded because they have intergenerational patriotism? My father's father's father died here.
Yeah.
My parents tilled this land. My parents came from this area. That leads to direct patriotism, things like this.
Yeah.
Why is it a better plan to use the third world as a breeding tube?
The same thing happens by the third generation. Third generation rule, they're just as patriotic and just as invested. So, and that's always been the case. Like it's been the case when we had the Irish. It's been the case when we brought in the Chinese. So, like we have Chinese Americans that are, families been here over 100 years. So, this is.
Is that what's going on in the UK?
Well, I'm not going to discuss what's specifically going on in the UK.
I mean, I'm just asking. Like, by the third generation, do you think that the Muslims are just going to like be waving flags like they are in Dearborn? They're just like, "Yay, America!"
Probably. Well, I don't know about that, but probably statistically, yeah, that's what the science shows.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, the thing is
third
that
generation.
all that you're doing is it sounds like you're just outsourcing. You're saying, "Hey, look, we do need first to go up."
That's just human resources.
But why is it that when we're talking about human resources,
Yeah.
right? The thing that makes all these third worlders have all these children, right? Don't they have an ought from their religion to do that?
So
don't you kind of need the Christians to keep breeding people for you?
To respond, and then we do
Yeah, go ahead.
So now you're distinguishing between do they believe they have an ought?
Yeah.
Or is that ought true or false? So
Do they believe they have the ought to do it?
Yeah, they believe that.
And so they are doing it because they believe that they have an ought to do it. And
by
you
the
are
third
like, hang
generation,
on.
they'll
I just want to
melt
point this
into
out.
the same status.
You,
So,
hang on,
but
Richard, let me
let's
finish
talk
my
about-
point and I'll let you get into it. I promise.
Let's talk about
No, let
actual-
me finish my point first. The case of the matter is that you just admitted that Christians have an ought to have children. Because they have that ought to have children, you're going to use them as a breeding factory for your nation. What's really funny about this,
Secularists also
though,
have
why
children.
shouldn't we have the same programs, same money spent, same things like this on our own domestic policy so that we can get our own domestic birth rate back up? Are people groups not worth preserving at all?
Here's a point where we might agree on something.
Okay.
So
We'll end with this point.
when we get to the point where we're globally the population is declining, right? So we don't have any alternative. So we have two options at that point. One is to start retooling society to survive the declining population, which is entirely doable, especially with robotics, etc. Or we can actually start investing money in actually paying people to become parents. So if you actually want American women to have more kids and get married and so on, I think the government should pay them to do that. And then you would
They already do.
You would have to persuade us to do that.
Well, hang on. But
Richard, we do have to go in the Q&A so people can. I think there are a number of people that want to ask questions. But this has been a fantastic discussion, gentlemen. We really do appreciate it. Stellar debate. We're going to jump into it very quickly. Come on up, Doctor. Thank you.
Dr. Carrier, you said human well-being above all else. Considering you're pro-choice and abortion completely disregards the well-being of that human being, isn't it correct to say you don't value human well-being above all else?
That's a good question because it didn't come up in the debate or anything like that. So the thing is human well-being, there has to actually be a person, right? So this, and it's evidence-based reasoning. So here's where I probably agree with you. I actually agree with the original Roe v. Wade decision, which said third trimester abortion does have right to child issues. So that the defense of the mother is the only way that you should have third trimester abortions. That's Roe v. Wade. That's actually the ruling that was there. I agree with that because it's ambiguous at that stage whether there's a person there or not because of the development of their brain. Before the third trimester, there's no physically possible way that there's a person in there. So it's pre-person. It's basically a half-built house rather than a fully running one. So I think, rights. I think personal rights, in some sense, you can justifiably say they should start in the third trimester.
We have to do rapid fire where there aren't any responses. So it's just the question. That's it.
Fine. I'm going to borrow from Andrew Wilson. I want your yes or no answer, and then I want your qualifier.
Okay.
From your worldview, if Christian nationalists, through persuasion and democracy, did make the requisite changes to make a homosexual action illegal and punishable by death, would that be fascist?
Yes.
All right, Jake.
Dr. Carrier, I would say that fascism actually is a political ideology that started in the 20th century in Italy. But would you say that all of the native tribes throughout history, including all of the Aztecs and chieftains, are all fascist? And if so, what would you define the movement spearheaded by Benito Mussolini as?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that gets into the whole thing we're talking about. I don't know why it matters, the definition of fascism. That's so pointless. But it doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is what it is.
Because you called us all fascist.
So the short answer, like if you wanted a yes or no, right?
So like I gave you what I think fascism is, where it comes from.
Yeah.
Are all of these ancient tribes fascist? And if so, what is the movement that was spearheaded by Mussolini called?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question. So the word was definitely coined in the early 20th century. I mean, the Italians are the ones who invented it. The concept of what it refers to doesn't necessarily have to originate when the word originated, right? So as regarding other tribes and stuff, we have to go case by case as to how they actually conducted their government. I don't know enough about the Aztecs to answer that question. But if you look like the Bush people in Africa right now, yeah, the Bush people in Africa are democratic, and so were the Iroquois.
The Aztecs.
I don't know enough about the Aztecs.
Okay, any Indian tribe that didn't practice democracy, were they fascist?
If they were using force to enforce their will,
What would you define the movement spearheaded by Benito Mussolini? What is that called?
fascism. Yeah, I don't understand why that's relevant.
Rapid fire.
Do you think that the millions of Muslims that you advocate come in to help solve our fertility rate share the same values that you do of democracy and individual liberty?
I don't know about millions. Over what period of time are you talking about?
You don't think that you would take millions to help solve our fertility rate?
No, so would I do that?
You advocate for that.
So assuming we all agree, so remember we're talking about voting, so we all as a society agree that this is a problem that we solve, right? It is not automatically the case that we need to solve the fertility rate problem. We might actually be better off with returning to the population level of World War II. Our society might actually get better off if we did that. Getting there is a problem. But anyway, regarding who we bring in, I think we just follow sensible, rational, evidence-based policies as to who we allow to immigrate in. I don't think they're going to be majority Muslim because that's not normally how we're making these calls. We've got people coming from Asia, we've got people coming from these Christian countries south of us, and so on. And the final result will be by the third generation, they're not going to be the scary Muslims that you're worried about. So.
All right.
I'll serve Dearborn.
If you can wait just a few more minutes, folks, just so you can keep the discussion down, just so people that are sitting around you can hear.
You keep granting yourself morality, good, evil, justification, but I'm not going to let you run from it, and I need for both of you to basically give the account for the justification for your criteria. Justify your stance. Justify the criteria you're using to justify your stance, please.
So I'm not sure which stance that you're referring to. Given your intro, it sounds like you're asking for how I derive moral values or how I derive prescriptive conclusions. If that's what your question is, then I recommend, again, that article I talked about in Religions, because I literally build it all out there with all the cited sources and all of that. And it is what we've talked about a little bit in our discussion. I talked about it in my opening, which is how we construct ought statements from desires and the way the world works and what achieves those desires.
My question pertains to the source you use with Immanuel Kant. Why would you use Immanuel Kant to try to show that oughts can be derived from an is, even though that Kant himself believed that this only worked in practical rationality and not in moral requirements?
Yeah, that's a good question.
He specifically says in Critique of Pure Reason on page 556, he says experience teaches what is and what has happened, but not what ought to happen.
Yeah, so that's a good question. The reality is that Kant admitted, so when that came up in the discussion, I needed to establish that there is a way to empirically prove an ought. That was before we get to the question, and I made this distinction a couple times. The distinction between oughts that are true and oughts that are morally true. So getting to the moral ought, you're right. Kant had a different maneuver for the moral ought. I actually proved that his maneuver is a hypothetical imperative. That's actually in some of my published peer-reviewed work. So that actually, in fact, he constructed his entire categorical imperative system on a hypothetical imperative. So Philippa Foot, who also pointed this out, was right. That even Kant's categorical imperative is a hypothetical imperative, and is proved. Even Kant himself tried to prove it the same way, using what he regarded as a universal desire, that everybody desires to be a man of this nature. And therefore, that is why it would compel them, and therefore makes it true that they ought to follow the categorical imperative. So Kant is an example of even Kant, that's why I said even Kant, who is promoting categorical imperatives, even he agreed that hypothetical imperatives can be proved empirically. So that establishes that. And then we go to the next step, which was that Kant's categorical was a hypothetical.
There's a few more questions.
All right, Dr. Carrier, you stated that you have to look at what Christians have done versus what they say. Should we do the same based upon atheists and what they've done in the past when they have power? This is our challenge.
Yeah, so it's a false comparison because Christianity is to religion what secular humanism is to atheism. So you can have like Islam and Christianity are both religions, but you wouldn't say that whatever's true of Islam is true of Christianity. So the same thing goes with atheism. Atheism includes a lot of different worldviews, some of them quite horrible. So it's not just atheism. That's why I'm saying secular humanism. Secular humanism is a subset of atheism. So the question should be secular humanists. So are there evil atheist ideologies? Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. Dr. Carey, multiple times in this debate, you made a positive reference and sentiment to the government created by the American Revolution, which was, at the most critical definition, nominally Christian. Now, in the middle of the debate, you made negative sentiment in reference to the French Revolution, which was the most secular, which is militantly anti-religious. And historians have causally linked the French Revolution and the other revolts to the widespread breakdown of social cohesion in Europe at large, which then led to the societies that turned totalitarian, like Italy, Germany, and Spain, and Russia, Mao's China, and Pol Pot, Yugoslavia with Tito. So would it not be rational and based on evidence that the massive death tolls by those atheist, militantly anti-religious governments lead you to abandon the secular part of your position and instead embrace Christian humanism, which is way better across all metrics of history?
Well, that's a good question, except the last part is false. So finding an exception to the rule doesn't negate the rule, right? So statistically, so it's a statistical correlation. Correlation is not a full correlation of 2, it's a correlation that's above 1. So statistical correlation is, statistically, Christian governments usually turn out badly. Atheist governments turn out badly when they're not acting in a democratic fashion. So the French Revolution was definitely a despotic action. So they the actual purge of it, it's very similar to Marxist Russia, which is, this is not a secular human society. This is actually a different form of atheism that is actually toxic in all the same ways that Christian nationalism can be.
So Richard,
Better is what's better for everyone. Quote from you. I believe you cited social thriving. Recently, I was reading some anthropology work by Dr. Pierce Raft. Let me tell you about a small island off the coast of Australia in Papua New Guinea. On the island, there are the Sambari people, also known as the Cum Warriors.
Yeah, because everybody's making noise.
On the island, so on this island of Papua New Guinea, there's the Sambari people, also known as the Semen Warriors. They have a rite of passage where the elders sodomize the children to bring manhood. From all the studies into them and their tradition, the children love it and say it's positive for their society. Now tell me, is it fascist or bad to force that to stop?
I don't know anything about that, right? So I don't know how much of that is true. And I don't know
But let's assume it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So let's assume that it is true. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's definitely a violation of human rights, and that's a kind of society that I think definitely is bad. Like that's what I'm arguing against. Is that that's the kind of society we should not have. We should actually have a society that prevents that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they like it.
Yeah, but that's the difference between being irrational, having a false belief, and being rational, having a true belief. That's why my argument, I didn't argue that Christians don't believe what they believe. I argued that what they believe is bad. They might not believe that it's bad, but empirically shows that it's bad, just like that would be empirically bad.
We have all right, hold on, I got to go to the next question. All right, last question, sir.
I have a question for both of you. I am blind. I've been blind since birth. There's statistically a very low chance that someone like me will be a net benefit to society. So in the world you would like, in the society you'd like, purely based on your worldview, can you tell me what the place for someone like me would be and how you come to that conclusion based on purely your own worldview?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question. I disagree with the premise that you're not a net benefit to society. Blind people can accomplish a lot. So there isn't really any way you're not producing a net benefit to society. I don't think blindness impairs your ability to do that.
I'll give you a quick, really
yeah.
quick.
Statistically, I'm more likely to take more from society than I am to give. It's not that I can't give anything, but net.
That's your net.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking money. Okay. So you contribute, like, as a human being, you contribute a lot to the world that is not financial. Like you contribute to the lives of your friends and family, and contribute through work by producing things and so on. So there's a lot of contribution that you're making to society. So that's why, like, if you just talk about money, that's not bad. And I think if you look at it in terms of the Rawlsian perspective, which is
general any type of resource, I'm more likely to need more help than I'm able to provide. I'm more likely to
that's your net. You said net.
Any form of resource, energy, community.
I doubt that's as true as you said. But even if it's true, let's say it's true, because it's definitely true for some people, for sure. So the whole point of that is, so the Rawlsian perspective is the best society is one that you would arrange, but not knowing who you get to be in that society, right? So you don't know if you're going to be black, you don't know if you're going to be poor, you don't know if you're a woman, you don't know if you're black. And would you still want to be in that society knowing that you don't get to pick who you are in that society? You could end up being anybody, and you'd be happy with that society. And so if you reason it out that way, you would get the answer to your question. It's like what would be the best society to arrange for someone who happens to be blind? So that if I or someone else ends up blind in that society, we would agree that this is the best society for me to be in. And that's why we're looking at human good. That's really the only resource that we're talking about, not like how much money you make or how much electricity you burn or anything like that. The question is, like, you as a human being, right? Like your life itself, you value your life, right? So you value that. And when you look at it in terms of what it is that you get yourself, would we want to help you continue to do that, right? Like it's in terms of like insurance, like some people's houses burn down, some people's houses don't burn down. But insurance, yeah, a lot of money goes, all of the money that we're paying to insurance company for our premiums goes to pay someone a new house. But I never get a new house, right? So it's I get the coverage, right? So if I do get my house burned down, I do get coverage. So the society as a system actually helps you. And so I think that's, if you're disabled, it's the same kind of thing. That if you got like bad into the society's actually got insurance to cover that, right? And just the same as anybody else. If someone else here like became blind, it'd be the same thing. They've got insurance, we've got your back. And that's because you are valuable individuals.
Thank you for voting, Andrew. I think he asked for you as well. Andrew.
Yeah, so obviously Christians believe that human beings are in the affairs of God, with respect, and that's why their charitable donations towards causes like that are so high. So I think if I had the preference, I would organize society around Christian ethics, because we seem to do pretty well with that, as opposed to the secularists. But yeah, that's what I would say.
We have to wrap up, but I do want to say, let's give a huge round of applause for our speakers. It's been a true treat. Thank you, guys. With that, housekeeping, folks, want to let you know is if you did sign up for a signed up page as the Super VIP, Ultra VIP, or All Access, be sure you get this before you leave tonight. And thank you so much for coming out to DebateCon 6. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. It's been a great time. Wait, one last thing. I do want to say, I want to give a huge thank you to Bob, my right-hand man. Bob, can you raise your hand? Thank you very much. Bob really is the one who runs the conference, and my two tech guys, Sean and Jeff. Thank you guys so much. They make it possible. So thank you guys. Thank everybody. I appreciate you guys.
So you don't condemn the genocide in Gaza?
This is a
That's 2
civilized-
for 2,
this
by
is
the
a
way. The last
civilized-
guy didn't condemn it. This guy didn't condemn it. Don't tell me to shut up. Don't tell me to shut. You have a Fuck Hamas shirt on. That's a resistance group. You hate resistance? Is that a Christian value?
So our friend here is a Hamas.
Hating the oppressed people is a Christian value?
It's an Islamic terrorist organization.
Using the word fuck is a Christian value?
All Hamas are dying. I hope all of Hamas are killed. Always interject, always be rude, and then claim to be the victim, just like the Palestinians.
You can keep mocking a genocide. It's literally just going to destroy your personal brand.
Genocide. Shut up. Man.
Apostate
Don't
prostate.
interrupt you.
Apostate
Don't interrupt you.
prostate.
Have your conversation, have your speech. I don't want to interact with you, man.
No problem.
You support terrorists. That's what you are. So just continue.
You support Israel. That's worse than terrorism.
Yes, and I hope they eradicate Hamas.
Thank you very much for being here, folks. I want to introduce Jvnior first in this debate on is Islam the one true religion, as Jvnior will be going first. Jvnior is a Palestinian Muslim who studies both Islamic and Christian scripture with academic precision. He retired from music and entrepreneurship to pursue a path for God after losing some of his family in the Gaza genocide. His goal is to call for people to pray for the return of Jesus. Thank you very much for being with us, Jvnior.
Thank you, thank you.
Please join me in welcoming Jvnior with a round of applause.
Thank you, James.
Also, with us today, please join me in welcoming Apostate Prophet, who runs the YouTube channel known as Apostate Prophet, which critiques Islam and has over 590,000 subscribers. Please join me in giving a round of applause for Apostate Prophet. Thank you for being with us. For our format, we are going to start with the 10 to 15 minute opening, Jvnior going first. I got the timer set for you, Jvnior. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, James. I hope my mic is loud and clear. You guys hear me? No? Okay, perfect. So, today's topic is whether Islam is a true religion or not. So, Christianity is not in the conversation. Thank God, because I'm not an expert in Christianity. But I am an expert in Islam. You know, people like Apostate Prophet claim to grew up Muslim. I grew up Muslim too. You know, he grew up in a Sunni Muslim household. I grew up in a Sunni Muslim household. I deviated. He deviated. But the difference is I came back. And the reason Muslims come back to their born religion, so whatever religion they were born into, Islam, when they deviate, is because the concept of salvation in Islam is really important. Muslims believe in heaven and hell, just like Christians do. So in Islam, when you look at heaven and hell, it is the ultimate destination. It is eternity. You're either going to spend eternity in hell or spend eternity in heaven. There's no in between. But God says, the one who has mustard seed of weight of faith in his heart will never enter hell. So with this debate, hopefully, I can, bring out this faith from my opponent, and I can also show you that Islam is the true religion. Because in the definition of the word Islam, there is the concept of Jesus' teachings. Jesus taught humanity, the lost tribes of Israel, the country that Apostate Prophet supports, right? Jesus told Israel to do what? To submit to God. So when you look at Islam as a truth, it can only and only be submission to God. Anything outside of that is not Islam. It's innovation. It's heretics. It's people's free will. Something that Jesus never did. So if you ever see me as a Muslim acting in a way that Jesus never acted, that's not Islam. I'm going to prove that. I'm going to prove to you that Islam is the true religion by proving that Jesus was a Muslim prophet. By proving Jesus was a Muslim. This statement is very controversial. People are like, how come you use this word? You think the sheikh in Egypt who says to kill the disbelievers is like Jesus? No, I didn't say that. I said Jesus is a Muslim. This sheikh is a Muslim. But who's the one who follows Islam better? Jesus or the sheikh? Jesus. So Muslims are not perfect. They never will be. I'm not a perfect Muslim. I used to live a sinful life. I only came back to Islam because of my fear of death. I came back to Islam because I knew one day I'm going to die. This world is going to leave me behind. Everything is going to leave me. When I saw my grandfather being buried and everyone walked away from the grave after 5 minutes, I was confused. I was like, I thought you loved him. I thought we were loved. I thought that was the truth. I thought love was the truth. But even love fades away. The truth never fades away. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest prophecies that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made was that Islam is going to be here until the end of time, until Judgment Day. It's never going to go away. This was said 1400 years ago. Today, Islam is a religion of 2.3 billion people. Sunni Islam is 1.8 billion people. So the prophecy came true. In Islam, there are 5 pillars of religion and 6 pillars of faith. The 5 pillars of religion are declaration of faith. So you declare that you're a monotheist, one God. That's how you enter Islam. To continue living as a Muslim, you have to pray 5 times a day. You have to fast the month of Ramadan. You have to go and do pilgrimage if you can afford it. If you cannot afford it, it's not a problem. You have to give 2% of whatever you saved up for the last year to the poor. And if your family's poor, then the best of charity is to your family. Don't these statements sound logical to you? Don't they sound like common sense? The best charity is to your family. Fasting is good for you. declaring your faith in God is what brings you to reality. Islam is based on these 5 things. Prayer, charity, fasting, pilgrimage, declaration of faith. Done. As long as you practice those 5 things, you don't really need knowledge to get into heaven. You don't need knowledge to earn salvation. You don't need knowledge to control yourself. Because through prayer, you will learn discipline. Through fasting, you will learn self-restraint. Through giving charity, you will learn how to be empathetic. Those are true human qualities that are needed in America. So when we come to debate about Islam, it's important to highlight these things. The 6 pillars of faith, the belief in one God, right? Belief in the divine decree, not like my last opponent, because I'm doing 2 opponents back to back right now. This is easy for me, it's natural. I'm a Muslim. I submit to God. Religion is not compulsory. This is the truth. There's a verse in the Quran that says, religion is not compulsory. La ikrah fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. So anybody that is forcing you to convert religion, killing you, this, going to hell. In my opinion, I hope they go to hell. I hope to God that I don't have to be with them in heaven. I hope to God that they will never have access to me. I hope to God that everyone in the audience is safe from such people. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, the top Muslim countries who invested in America, trillions of dollars last year, are all saying, be careful of uneducated extremist Muslims. The Muslim Brotherhood, be careful, be careful. Be careful of people who are trying to force you into their religion. Be careful of people who try to force their beliefs onto you. Because those people do not want the best. Those people do not care whether you have the truth or not. All they care about is you obeying them. But in Islam we're told not to even bow down to our prophet. I'm not allowed to bow down like this to my own prophet. I cannot even praise him as divine. My own prophet. The one who taught me about God. The one who brought me to God. The one who taught me everything. My teacher is not divine. So does that mean that Islam is not the truth? No, it doesn't. Because the way I live as a Muslim, I speak the truth. I say Jesus will return. I say Jesus Christ is the Messiah. I say Jesus was born of a virgin's birth from Virgin Mary. I say that Jesus was created by the command of Allah and that Jesus is the word of Allah. Jesus is the living and breathing word of God. You know what that means? That means that Jesus lived according to this book. Because what I'm trying to prove today is that this book is, not in its current form, but it's in its Arabic form, is the Arabic literal word of God. Now, why would God choose Arabic to reveal the Quran? We will dive into that. Because Arabic is a language that, for example, Apostate prophet here will never understand. It's a complex language. If you don't grow up speaking it, okay, you will never be able to recite قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدَ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. You can't recite it so fluently, so effortlessly, unless you speak it. This is not a limitation on humanity. This is not a restriction. This is not something that should deter you away from reading this book, because this book I have in front of me today is English. It didn't lose its meaning because it was translated. And the same thing with the Bible. The Bible doesn't lose its meaning when it's translated from Greek or Aramaic or whatever. It loses its meaning when people start to add verses to it. When people start to say, I don't like this, so I'm going to take it out. We don't have that in Islam. The punishment for that in Islam is literally like you're declaring war on God and the Prophet when you try to change something from the Quran. The Bible, when people translate it, conveniently enough, you see some verses are missing. Some things are gone. So in the Quran, we don't have this. And this is one of the things that Islam literally stands on. That no matter how hard you try, you're not satisfied with the Quran, no problem. There's a lot of Muslims who are not satisfied with the Quran. There's a lot of Muslims who look at the Quran as not even a divine source, and they call themselves Muslim. Okay? This is the truth. Your relationship with this book is irrelevant. This book didn't come to be your best friend. It came to guide you. It came to give you good tidings, glad tidings. It says in this book is only a warning to the disbelievers. Not a threat, a warning. God is the most merciful. God is able of throwing all of us into hell. But why should God do that? Did God create us for that? God didn't create us for that. That's a misconception. People think that salvation in Islam is exclusive to Muslims. How about the man who killed 99 people? There's a famous hadith in Islam where a man kills 99 people. He's a believer of God. What he killed? He committed sins. U.S. veteran kills people. He goes to a priest. Am I going to be forgiven for killing souls? Yes, if you give your soul to Jesus Christ. Great. Christianity is great. There is salvation. But I have to give my life to Jesus. I have to believe in certain things. There's certain requirement for you to earn salvation. Is there a requirement to earn salvation in Islam? No. There's no requirement. Literally zero requirement. To enter heaven, there's no requirement. All you have to do is attain God's mercy. God, who is watching us right now, listening to me speak. That is who I seek to attain the mercy of as a Muslim. I don't seek to conquer. I don't seek to be rich. I don't seek to control other people's beliefs. I don't seek to lie. I don't seek to deceive. All I seek to do is please my Creator. Isn't there any truth in my statements? Isn't there any truth in what I say? The Quran came as a warning to the disbelievers, as a glad tidings to the believers. Rejoice. The fact that this book exists means that religion is not compulsory anymore. Nobody can tell you what to do. Do not have fear. Do not be afraid. This book is proof that salvation belongs to everyone. Everyone, including the Apostate prophet, including myself. Even though he may not believe that I deserve salvation because I rejected the divinity of Jesus. because I didn't grow up in a Christian faith, because I didn't choose a Christian faith. That's the argument he's going to try and make. But for me, I know one thing for certain. I'm going to die one day and I'm going to meet my maker. He's going to ask me, what's your book? This is the book I'm confident in saying this is my book. I want to be judged according to this book. That is why Islam is my truth. If you want to be judged according to the Quran, accept the Quran as your truth. What does the Quran say? How do we get judged? The one who has a weight of mustard seed of faith in his heart will never enter hell. The one who has a mustard seed weight of arrogance in their heart will never enter heaven. Salvation is based on faith. But faith without works is empty. So Islam gives you the lifestyle to keep increasing your faith in God. No other religion gives you that. There's no other religion that gives you a lifestyle, day to day, full routine, curriculum, scheduled, you don't have to think, just follow it. And you do it. You're like, oh wow, I prayed 5 times today. I prayed on time. Notification went on. I went, found the direction to pray. I prayed. I feel good. I did something productive today. I feel disciplined. What other religion forces you to pray 5 times a day? Not forces you literally. There's not someone sitting at your front door telling you if you don't pray, I'm going to kill you. There's a misconception about Islam that that's the truth, but it's not. Nobody's going to force you to pray. God commanded us to pray. So if we don't pray, it's a sin. It's a sin. If I don't pray, it's a sin. I have to admit it's a sin. I have to admit it's wrong. It's wrong to not pray. Isn't that the truth? In Islam, there are so many different routes that you can think about. The route I chose as a Muslim is to submit to God alone. If I miss my prayer, if I sin, if I decide to leave my faith and not be a Muslim anymore, if I insult God, if I do bad things, I will never lose hope in Allah. I will never lose hope in the one God that created me. Why? Why should I? This book literally says, I came as a glad tidings to the believers. Do I believe in God? Yes, I do. Okay, what do I have to worry about? What do I have to worry about? If I believe in God, do I have to worry about what apostate prophet is going to say about me? No, I don't. So, I hope this conversation is going to be productive. I'm excited to hear what my opponent has to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good to see everyone here, and thank you for that opening statement. So, the debate topic, as agreed, is whether Islam is the one true religion, right? Did I get that one? Yes, that's correct. So, I don't have much to argue against here because there is not much that has been offered today. As the question, I just want to ask everyone, you don't have to answer me, I want to ask everyone who is watching to ask this question and to answer it to themselves. Has the point today been made in this opening statement that Islam is the one true religion? I'm not going to answer the question, you can ask it to yourselves and you can answer it to yourselves. The answer is quite clear. There has not been anything demonstrated in favor of the argument that my opponent is trying to make here. Of course, he's a Muslim. He's convinced that Islam is true. He comes from a Muslim background. He believes that Islam is the truth. So to him, it is absolutely the truth. But I haven't heard anything convincing at all in favor of this argument. It's very interesting because he starts out with a verse or a statement from Allah, from God. He keeps mentioning this. He repeatedly mentions it, and I really want to figure out where that statement comes from. He keeps talking about a mustard seed. He says that nobody who has the faith of the weight of a mustard seed will enter hell. Please, can you point to me, when you respond to this, where in the Quran you find the statement? I'm really curious, where in the Quran is the statement? You take that statement from, not from Islam, you take it from the Bible. Islam doesn't have such a statement. What it does say is that every single deed of yours will be brought forth in the day of judgment, even if it has the weight of a seed or of a mustard seed. That's it. It never says that you will not enter hell if you have faith, the weight of a mustard seed. So already, when he appeals to what Allah says, he appeals to statements that do not even originate from within Islam. Yet he stands here or sits here and wants to make the argument that people misinterpret or misrepresent Islam, and that Islam is the truth, and he knows that it is the truth, and he has all the facts and all the evidence, and he can argue for it. The second thing is, he said at the very beginning of his opening statement that he is going to prove to us today, remember, that Jesus was a Muslim. Has that happened? You can answer me if you would like to. Has there even been an attempt to make that to make such a point? No. It's very strange to me because he said, I'm going to prove to you today that Jesus was a Muslim. Then he didn't even try to make that point. So I have no idea what's happening here. Then he started comparing Jesus to Muhammad, and he said that Jesus was indeed a Muslim, and that if you want to be a proper Muslim, you have to be the way that Jesus was. And I don't remember the correct exact wording, but basically his implication is that that Jesus acted in alignment with Islamic morality, and that if you do not act in alignment with Islamic morality, you are probably not following Jesus. All right, let's compare Jesus and Muhammad. So the foremost figure in Islam to be taken as an example by Muslims, which the Quran commands Muslims to follow, is Muhammad. So he is the perfect example for all mankind. In him, the Quran says you will find a great moral example to follow. Muhammad's deeds and actions and words are known as the Sunnah. Muslims are generally commanded to follow him and to imitate him. So let's compare it. Muhammad commanded and used violence on multiple occasions. He fought over 60 wars and battles. He participated in them. He engaged in violence. He started killing. When he immigrated to Medina, the first thing he did was to establish an army, basically, a militia, that he then sent out to harass and to raid tribes, which eventually led to causing the first major battle between the Muslims and the Meccan polytheists. Jesus rejected violence. He never fought. He didn't commit acts of violence unless you want to take the one instance of him turning over the tables as an act of violence, where he violated the tables. So Muhammad took many wives, including a little child. He was very, very much obsessed with his desire. As the Quran also points out, the Quran says this is to make it easier for you, Muhammad. And Aisha, even according to the Islamic narrations, says that Allah hastens to fulfill his desires. Muhammad, according to the traditional Islamic sources, took multiple wives, including a little child who was 6 years old when the marriage was done, and 9 years old when the marriage was eventually consummated or fulfilled, meaning he had sex with her when he was in his 50s and she was 9 years old. What a sight. Muhammad approved of sex with captives. He took captives himself. He had sex with them, including killing their families and then taking them as captives, and having sex with them and marrying them and giving his followers also such captives. Jesus never did such a thing. Muhammad enforced rule by political and military power. Jesus refused worldly power and gave himself up. Muhammad killed his critics and war captives. Jesus forgave and prayed for the enemies and said, turn the other cheek. He said, forgive those who persecute you, love your enemies, and so on. Muhammad gained wealth through conquest. Jesus lived poor and told those who follow him to sell and to give away whatever they have and to come and follow him. So if you want to make a comparison between Islamic morality and Jesus, you're going to fail from an Islamic perspective. If you're going to argue that Jesus and Islamic morality are completely opposite, are completely different, are completely contradictory, that's where you have a point. And that's the point we can make. The thing is, I don't really, it's not very much relevant to the topic at hand here, so I'm not going to go further into it. He said that Christians worship, a figure, a man. In his previous debate, he emphasized that a lot, whereas Muslims do not worship anybody. They don't bow down in front of anybody. They're not allowed to bow down before Muhammad. The thing is that Muslims also go and kiss a rock, which Muhammad commanded them to do, basically, and he himself as well did, and hope that this rock will testify for them on the Day of Judgment, to expose or conceal their sins and to reveal how pious they were when they did the pilgrimage. They circle around a pagan cube, the Kaaba, which is a very, very interesting thing to stand on for a second. My opponent here tries to draw a connection between Islam and Christianity and Judaism. I went through his posts before. He argues that Islam is the original Judaism and Christianity, that the Bible is or Judaism and Christianity were originally Islam, but then they got corrupted by man. Okay, let's talk about the Kaaba. The Kaaba is a building that nobody had really heard of until the 7th century or until the 8th century, when Islam started emerging and rising as a power. Prior to that, Abrahamic religion, Jews and Christians, had no connection whatsoever to that cube. No mention. It is never mentioned in the Bible. It is never found in any historical context related to Christians and Jews. It is completely foreign. However, according to the Quran, the Kaaba is the first house of worship dedicated to Allah, built by people, built by Abraham and his son. Unfortunately, the reality of it is that the Kaaba was, like many other buildings throughout Arabia and throughout the Middle East, a cube-shaped building that was dedicated to a different deity, in this case to Hubal, one of the polytheistic gods that the Meccan polytheists worshipped, which comes from a different Middle Eastern religion. Even according to the Islamic sources, there was another such building known as the Bul-Khalasa in Yemen, also known as the Kaaba of Yemen, which Muhammad actually had destroyed during his lifetime. According to Islamic traditions, he sent over one of his followers to that Kaaba, that white Kaaba, and had it destroyed, and that person also killed everyone around it. So Islam is based on a cube that Muslims circle around, which is completely disconnected from biblical religion and biblical faith, and actually leads back to pagan origins. It has nothing at all to do with biblical tradition and biblical faith, with Abrahamic religion. It is built on paganism. That's where Islam comes from. And that's what they circle around. Now, you could make the argument that Islam actually, yes, does forbid bowing down before Muhammad and worshipping Muhammad, but we all know how it ends when somebody says something disrespectful about Muhammad. I mean, if I, for example, now he called Muhammad a pedophile, for example, I'm not doing it, I'm just saying, if, for example, I did it, this could immediately invite threats and terrorist attacks and things like that. We know how it goes. I get it all the time. People are killed over this. People are killed because they draw cartoons. That's it. So it does revolve around him. Yes, you do not worship him. You do not say we worship you. We do not. They do not say we bow down before him. However, what he leaves out is that in order to enter Islam, in order to become part of Islam, in order to become a Muslim, to submit to Allah, you have to also affirm that Muhammad is the true prophet, the final messenger. I can ask him what the Shahada is. The Shahada is the fundamental statement that is uttered when you want to become a Muslim. It is part of the pillars of Islam. You have to utter it in order to become a Muslim. It does not say, I testify that there is a God and I submit to him. What it does say is that I testify there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So this directly contradicts with what he just claimed. He said that if you want to become a Christian and you want to go to heaven, you have to believe and follow Jesus. Whereas in Islam, all you have to do is just believe in this, believe in this. Yeah, okay, what does believing in this entail? It entails that you also accept Muhammad as a complete judge, as an authority, as the final messenger, and as the Quran says, as the one whom you should not question and whom you should make a judge or an authority over all affairs, together with Allah. So it is very much, although it is a monotheistic religion, also very much a religion where you take this other guy, this prophet, as kind of like a minor deity besides Allah, practically. He talked about Arabic being complex. I have no idea what that has to do with the topic, but it's actually quite funny because he said it is a religion for all humanity, but then he points out how I, even as a former Muslim, who recited Quran verses all the time, would find it too complex and would not understand a word of Arabic if I tried or something like that. I mean, it's a strange point to make if you also want to argue that Islam is a religion for all humanity, just so you know. But I can recite some Quran verses and some Quran chapters. If you want me to impress you, I can do that. What else? I think what summarized his whole position was a statement that he made towards the very end of his opening statement, which was he said that in Islam is very simple because in Islam you don't have to think, just follow it. He did make that statement at the end. It's not something that I'm saying. I wrote it down. It's verbatim. He said it. You don't have to think, just follow it. I agree. That's what Islam is. I agree. Further, since there was not much to argue and I still have some time, I want to make a few points here. So the Quran, let's get back to the topic since he didn't actually address the topic. Is Islam the one true religion? I will address only one verse in the Quran and rest my case with that. That verse is chapter 9, verse 13. It follows chapter 9, verse 29, which instructs Muslims to go out and fight those who disbelieve in Islam, who don't believe in Allah and His Messenger, to subjugate them. It then continues and says in chapter 9, verse 30, the Jews say Uzair is the son of Allah, translated as Ezra. And the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. May Allah destroy them. That is a statement that they took from those who disbelieved before them. May Allah destroy them, how deluded are they. Now, I went around Israel recently. I traveled to Israel, took a quite long trip. I went around asking Jews in the streets, random Jews, the question, do you worship Ezra? They all had, they had very, very funny reactions. Nobody had any idea what I'm talking about. It's because the statement, the Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah, is complete nonsense. That was created by Muhammad or his followers in the 7th century, and Muslims today struggle to explain what in the world that means. Muhammad probably misunderstood something from the Jews that were in his environment, so he thought that Jews worship and take Ezra, who is a prophet, a scribe, a very important one, as God besides Allah, that they worship him, that they consider him the son of God, just as Christians consider Jesus the son of God and actually worship him. And yes, we do. So, this verse alone demonstrates and proves that Islam is complete nonsense, that it is completely false, because the Quran is supposed to be the perfect word of Allah. In fact, if I ask him, is the Quran the verbatim, direct word of Allah, he will say yes. So the Quran is the perfect direct word of Allah, and the Quran makes the statement that Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah. Now you can explain the context of it, I can explain the context of it as well, because we also have the supporting hadith, affirmed, testified, that Muhammad described what will happen on the day of judgment. Muhammad said on the day of judgment, Allah will call forth the Jews, and he will ask them, what did you used to believe? The Jews will say, according to him, we used to worship Ezra, the son of Allah. Upon which Allah will answer and say, you are liars, go to hell. And then he will call the Christians and they will say, we used to worship Jesus. And he will say, you are liars, go to hell. So Quran and Muhammad clearly affirm that Ezra is the son of God. This makes Islam completely false. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that opening. Gentlemen, I'm willing to give this a shot, let it be organic, but if there's any interruptions, we'll jump into time sections.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, opening statement from Apostate Prophet. The audience saw it. He literally just read ChatGPT on his laptop. This is embarrassing, right? And the semantics that he comes with is so low IQ and so childish. There's a Yemeni sect of Jews who believe Ezra was the son of God. God used that example in the Bible to warn the Christians who say God has a son. There are many verses in the Quran, okay, that say it is not befitting for the most merciful to have a son. Cease from saying three. Do not say Trinity. Do not worship Mary and Jesus. The Quran says this. Okay, so when the Quran speaks on a certain sect or a certain belief, it does not attest that to all of Christians and Jews. It does not say all Jewish people worship Ezra. The Quran never claimed that, but you made that interpretation by yourself. It's very clear why you flip-flop around your beliefs. If that's how you interpret a Quran verse.
This is open dialogue, right? Because we skipped rebuttals and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, once again, I have no idea what that has to do with the topic. Yes, we know the Quran says do not worship this, do not worship that. I'm not sure what that has anything to do with the topic. Does it have anything to do with the topic at all, whether Islam is the one...
Is it true that you worship Jesus or not?
Yes.
Okay, so the Quran tells you not to worship Jesus.
I don't care what Quran says.
I understand you don't, but what I'm trying to tell you is that this is the word of God, so whether you like it or not, doesn't matter.
All right,
okay?
Then what is your response to my clear argument that in chapter 9, verse 30, it says that Jews worship Ezra as the son of God,
okay,
that no Jew has ever done such a thing. So how can you then say when it makes such a...
No Jew has ever done such a thing? Where is your proof for that clip? I just told you there's a sect in Yemen that literally worship Ezra as a god. Ezra, okay?
Prove it.
Bro, you could literally Google this fact. The Quran refers to a specific Jewish group from Yemen, okay? These Yemenis, you can keep saying prove it. I'm literally telling you where they're from. I'm telling you this Jewish sect elevated Ezra to a divine status, and they're from Yemen. You said there is no Jewish person that exists to elevate Ezra to such status. There has never been a Jew in history. That's what you claim. That's a lie.
Right, so
Apostate. That's a lie.
Chapter 9, verse 30,
let me expose another lie that you said. You said that the Quran doesn't mention mustard seed, right? Yes. Yes.
He has very big difficulties respecting opponent speaking because he just interrupted. I let him speak for a while, but anyway. So the Quran says in 9 verse 30 that the Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah. I just explained to everybody the context. It is in the hadith, you can find it directly. Muhammad further explains that the Jews Jews, not one Jew, not two Jews, not a tribe of Jews, the Jews will be called on the day of judgment, and they will be asked, what did you use to worship? They will say, we used to worship Uzair or Ezra, the son of Allah. And he will say, you have disbelieved, go to hell. Then he will call the Christians, then he will call the Muslims. The Muslims are the ones who actually believe in Allah. So he now comes and invents a tribe that actually believed Ezra as the son of God. I'm telling you, it doesn't exist.
Okay. Okay, so if I invented it, then scholars like Adolf Neubauer, Abraham Geiger, Rabbi Joseph Schwartz, Hartwig Hirschfeld, they shouldn't be agreeing with me. They shouldn't be agreeing with me if I'm literally lying about a Jewish sect from Yemen that elevated Ezra to divine status. You're denying that.
One question, what are you reading from right now?
You're denying that. No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're telling me to bring proof that there's a sect in Yemen that worships Ezra. I just named 4 scholars. You're not a scholar. I named 4 scholars that agree with my statement. You're not a scholar. So I don't care if you agree with my statement or not.
He was just reading from ChatGPT.
Now, I didn't read from ChatGPT. I read 4 scholar names. I read 4 names of scholars. I didn't read from ChatGPT. Yes. So he said that the Quran doesn't mention any mustard seed verse.
That's what I said.
That's what you said. You said that the Quran does not mention any verse. You said, where's the verse about the mustard seed? What did you say? I'll give you a chance to clear
The
up.
Quran does not say that anyone who has the faith of the weight of a mustard seed will never enter hell.
And you called yourself a Sunni Muslim?
Yeah, tell me which Quran verse is it?
There's literally a saying in Sunni Islam.
Which Quran
that
verse?
without the Quran, there's no Sunnah. And without the Sunnah, there's no Quran.
Which Quran verse is it? Tell me.
Chapter 31, verse 16. You can go to your ChatGPT. Oh, my son, even if it be the weight of a mustard seed, and it is hidden in a rock, or in the heavens, or in the earth.
Such as arrogance. Allah will bring it forth. Indeed, Allah is subtle all the way. Chapter 21, verse 47.
I said the Quran.
We will set up the scales of justice on the day of resurrection, and no soul will be lost at all. Even if it is the weight of a mustard seed, we will bring it forth, and sufficient we are as account.
So I said, as you have all heard very clearly, that the Quran never ever says that whoever has the faith, the weight of a mustard seed, he will never.
The teacher of the Quran said that. Our teacher of the Quran said that.
So he made the claim that God said it, right? And I said that the Quran never says that whoever has faith, the weight of a mustard seed, will never enter.
Are you saying God's
His response to it, be quiet, I'm talking. His response to
God's verse can run out?
His response to that is exactly this. He quoted Quran verses. Did any of these Quran verses say that whoever has faith, the weight of a mustard seed, he will never enter hell? No.
It said every matter, even the weight of a mustard seed, will be brought forth.
Okay,
that means your arrogance, your faith will be brought forth. Everything in account, even this water cup that I put down, this action will be brought forth on Judgment Day. And all of humanity is going to witness that.
Right.
You don't understand what's going to happen.
So we have just concluded that the Quran actually does not ever say that whoever has faith, the weight of a mustard seed, will never enter hell.
It does say that. The Quran says that. The Quran says, we will set up the scales of justice on the day of resurrection, and no soul will be wronged at all. Even if it is the weight of a mustard seed, we will bring it forth. What is God talking about when he says we will bring it forth? What will God bring forth to be judged on judgment? Is it going to be...
Let me ask you a pointed question. Does any of those verses that you quoted say that if you have faith, the weight of a mustard seed, you will never enter hell? Does it say that anywhere?
It literally says...
Does it say anywhere?
It literally says...
Does it say anywhere you will not enter hell?
No, let me finish my point. It literally says in this verse, we will set up the scales of justice on the day of resurrection. What is justice? What is eternal justice? Heaven or hell? You are actually a liar. You simply don't understand anything about Islam. So you've run away from Islam, became an atheist, now somehow claim to be Orthodox, but you don't represent any Christian values. All you've done is lie. All you've done is expose yourself as a liar. I just told you, justice will be brought on Judgment Day, even if it is the weight of a mustard seed, and sufficient Allah is an accountant, and no soul will be wrong. What does it mean when Allah says, no soul will be wrong? If you have a mustard seed weight of faith in your heart, you will not be wrong. God will give you heaven for that. Our teacher, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is the one who taught us the Quran. So when he says something about the Quran, when he clarifies the verse and says, guys, this is your salvation. This verse that's just not revealed is your little salvation. Have faith.
Let's do it like this. So let me say, it's very simple. If I told you, I will regard everything that you did, and if you did only one good thing, I will not beat you up. And I would also say, I will regard everything that you did, and I will treat you justly. Are those two statements the same thing?
Absolutely. Because if you literally consider arrogance and faith as the only two deciding factors of justice on Judgment Day, you will understand that salvation is not inclusive to Muslims, and that is why Islam is the true religion. Islam believes that you can earn salvation.
Your religion doesn't believe I can earn salvation. How is that the truth? You literally believe that I'm going to hell. You believe that I'm already sealed and going to hell because I've denied the divinity of Jesus. This is the problem with debates like this. People like him believe I'm going to go to hell. This is the problem.
Of course, he wants to keep on talking. I can do this too. We can just spend the entire time just talking.
You're just lying. You're not talking.
I know you're very excited. I know you're very excited about what's going on in your land right now. Please, this is a civilized debate.
So you don't condemn the genocide in Gaza? That's 2 for 2, by the way. The last guy didn't condemn it. This guy didn't condemn it. Don't tell me to shut up. Don't tell me to. You have a fuck Hamas shirt on. That's a resistance group. You hate resistance? Is that a Christian value?
So our friend here is a
hating the oppressed people is a Christian value? Using the word fuck is a Christian value?
I don't follow like you. Me? You see that? Okay, how many times do I have to jump in and stop him from talking over to continue the debate? No, you're not. Right. I'll give you a few minutes until you jump in immediately. 3 seconds now. So, as we have demonstrated, he makes up a verse, says this is what God says. I demonstrate that God never says such a thing according to his own holy book. He then lies about it. He invents something out of his behind and then act like I am the liar. He calls me a liar. This is basically the morality of Islam. Islam doesn't teach you to be truthful. Islam doesn't teach you to be honest. As he loses it, he starts talking over me, inventing things out of thin air. Then he wants to evoke sympathy again, the poor sympathy, to win over the debate. This is what he did in the other debate. This is exactly what he did in the other debate. Has he demonstrated at this point at all that Islam is the truth? No. Has he demonstrated that Islam is the one true religion? No. He says that in Islam everybody goes to heaven. I'm sorry, he just said in the other debate that whoever does not believe in Islam or whoever chooses anything other than Islam, he will never have salvation. He will never go to heaven. This is literally what the Quran says. If I reject Islam, I will go to hell. That's what he believes. That's what the Quran says. Does it not?
Look, honestly, may God guide your soul, because you've only spoken lies about Islam here. Salvation, and I will stand on this until the day I die. Salvation belongs to every single person in this audience. Every single one of you deserves heaven, including myself, including him. But he can't say the same, because you need to believe what he believes in order to enter heaven. Islam makes it clear. God will not judge you based on your religion. God will judge you on 2 things: your faith and your arrogance. I came today to teach you the Quran, not to answer to his requests. Because this is the problem with speakers like this. They get exposed so easily. When a verse is brought up with the words that they claim don't even exist in the Quran, he exploded. I didn't even get to make my points to prove Islam is a true religion, because he kept lying about the religion. So, if I may, let me explain why the Quran is the true word of God, according to the Sunnah. Thank you. It's not possible to understand this Quran without the Sunnah. If you bring any sect of Islam that claim that this Quran can be understood without the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they're not a Muslim.
All right, so I'm going to read a few Quran verses here, which he...
With or without the Sunnah?
Always interject, always be rude, and then claim to be the victim, just like the Palestinians. So, the Quran chapter 98 verse 6, indeed, those who disbelieve from the people of the book and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell to stay there forever. They are the worst of all beings. What this verse is telling you is that all those who have disbelieved in Islam from among the people of the book, which is a term used for Christians and Jews, all those who have a book, and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell to stay there forever. They are the worst of creatures. So the Quran calls us all who disbelieve in Islam the worst of creatures. It says in chapter 5, verse 72 to 75, this is a series of verses which go against Christianity. In chapter 5, verse 73, it says, those who say Allah is one of 3 have certainly fallen into disbelief. There is only one God. If they do not stop saying this, those who disbelieve among them will be afflicted with a painful punishment, and for them is no rescue. So the Quran is very clear. It says, as I also quoted, that whoever chooses a religion any other than Islam, for him there is no help on the day of judgment. That in order to go to heaven, you have to become a Muslim. You have to believe in the Quran and in Muhammad. If you choose anything else, you go to hell. If I say Islam is nonsense, I go to hell. Is it true or not?
Look, your opinion is shaped by 2 things: genetics and your social programming. God, like I said, judges you on 2 things: your arrogance and your faith. You are trying to bring your belief, what you believe in, what your opinion about Islam is. That has nothing to do with the conversation here today. Islam is the true religion simply because salvation belongs to non-Muslims as well as the Muslims. Does salvation belong to a non-believer? Does salvation belong to someone who takes God as an enemy? Does salvation belong to someone who does not act like Jesus? I don't know. That's why I repent, because today I did not act like Jesus. Today I did not prove that Islam is a true religion. So let me take the chance to do that right now. Islam is the only religion that explains the exile of Ishmael in detail. That is why we know Prophet Abraham is the one. Look, he's going to ChatGPT. Abraham is the one who built the holy mosque in Mecca and asked God to make it a pilgrimage for humanity, a location of pilgrimage for humanity. This was a request said by Prophet Abraham, and you can find it in the hadiths, because our teacher of this Quran is Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, not apostate. He said, I bring stuff from my behind. But clearly this guy loves supporting someone with prostate cancer who kills children, and he calls that righteous. He calls that blessed by God, chosen by God. A prime minister that claims he's done nothing wrong despite killing 13,000 children.
So, as you can just see, I quoted Quran verses to the guy who claims to be the expert on Islam. That's what he said. He's an expert on Islam. He's not an expert on Christianity, which is very funny, because he wants to come here and debunk Christianity and affirm that Islam is true. I quoted Quran verses to him which directly contradict with the claims that he just made. What did he do in response? He dismissed it. He called it my opinion. Apparently I am Allah. Apparently I am Allah, because I quoted Allah here according to him. But he said that this is just my opinion. Did he respond to the Quran verses? He did not. He just tells you whatever you want to hear. He just tells you whatever he wants to tell you, because he doesn't actually have anything proper to stand on. Because Islam doesn't stand on anything firm. It is built on not even sand, it's built on complete garbage. It's built on mud. That's what it is built on. So of course he has to go to different issues here.